Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲 on Wattpad. Now let's start. Wake up. Survive. Repeat. That was Izuku's life for the past 10 years. It all began when he was diagnosed with an illness that had no cure, being quirkless. His twin sister, however, possessed a quirk and was considered normal. Although her ability wasn't particularly strong, she was still seen as typical, while he was not. The changes in his family were subtle at first. They sometimes neglected to greet him when he returned home. His gifts were of lesser quality than his sister's. They occasionally forgot to call him for dinner, and his interests were overshadowed by hers. Initially, he brushed it off, thinking it was a common experience and that things would improve as he proved himself. Days turned into months, and months into years, with no change in their dynamic. If anything, it grew worse. Izuku felt like a stranger in his own home. Sure, they provided for him and ensured he had what he needed, but anything emotional or personal was absent. He couldn't even call it a home because he never felt like he belonged there. His family was large, filled with aunts and uncles, who were friends of his parents and his sister's friends. Yet he only saw them on birthdays where he received gifts for things he had no interest in. He hardly knew anything about them, except that they were heroes, just like his family. School was no better, he was shunned by everyone. Outcast wasn't the right term, as he had never been accepted. Outsider was more fitting. While he did experience some bullying, it was rarely physical, aside from the occasional encounter with a certain blonde classmate. Instead, he was isolated, with even the teachers keeping their distance. He was all alone. Izumi's friends were unkind, often questioning him about his aspirations and dreams. His dream was to be a hero just like his father, but they crushed that dream. If this was how those expected to be great heroes acted, why would he want to emulate them? All he knew was that he wanted to help people, no matter how that manifested. It was disheartening that those around him interpreted his words as a longing to be a hero. When would this torment end? Izuku put on his school shoes, preparing to head to school. After finishing his daily run, he was ready to leave, hoping to do so before his twin was ready, avoiding the forced walk together. He stood up, revealing his black middle school uniform. He was a lean 5 feet 10 inches, with some muscle from his training. However, that often gave the wrong impression at school. His hair remained a messy green, just like his eyes. As he was about to step outside, he heard his sister saying goodbye to their parents and putting on her shoes behind him, prompting a sigh of defeat from him. He didn't respond as he opened the door and walked out, putting on his backpack. The streets were silent as Izumi followed closely behind, an uncomfortable tension hanging in the air. Izumi had long blonde hair and deep blue eyes that mirrored their father's. She stood around 5 feet 7 inches with a decent build. She asked if something was wrong, which Izuku found unusual but chose to ignore. He thought to himself that it was typical of her to act as if she cared. He continued walking, leaving a stunned Izumi behind. She frowned and began to follow him, contemplating whether they had gone too far and if their relationship could ever be mended. As they passed the Bakugo home, Izuku didn't stop, while Izumi hesitated, wanting to call out to him and apologize for everything. She had tried to prevent him from becoming a hero, primarily to keep him away from the threat of a notorious villain. Their father had said that the villain was dead, but she knew that someone like that could easily return. She needed to protect her brother from this life, fearing that the monster would come for him. Izumi reassured her friend Katsumi that she was fine, but Katsumi and Katsuki exchanged confused glances before following her. Izuku leaned back in his train seat, allowing the rhythmic clatter of the train to soothe him as he listened to a podcast. He had managed to board the train before his sister and her friends, granting him a moment of solitude to reflect on his future. While many feared their thoughts, for Izuku, they were his only source of companionship. He had applied to UA but was uncertain about pursuing the hero course. He was fit and capable of defending himself, but he understood his limitations. Perhaps he would consider the support or business course, which would align better with his ideals and provide financial stability. His thoughts were interrupted by a commotion further down the train. He glanced over and saw a girl being harassed by a group of boys. His fist clenched, a familiar feeling gnawing at his heart, the urge to help others. Before he could think, his body moved instinctively to intervene, resulting in him being struck in the face. Sporting a bruise across his eye, he continued on his way to school, while the girl he had helped quickly disappeared. He sighed, shouldering his backpack once more as he made his way to the school. When his sister and her friends arrived, they were shocked to see his bruise. Izumi approached him with a cold expression, demanding to know who had done this. Izuku merely stared at her, returning to his drawing. She placed her hand over his notebook, insisting on an answer. He retorted, questioning if she intended to reward the perpetrator. Flustered, she was about to protest but was interrupted by their teacher, who told her to leave Izuku alone, deeming it too early for such drama. Reluctantly, she returned to her seat, leaving Izuku to sigh, knowing they would likely bother him later. The teacher entered the classroom, announcing that it was time to begin. Izuku looked up to see the tired expression on the teacher's face, a replacement for the previous one who had left under questionable circumstances. Izuku felt a sense of relief knowing that at least one person tolerated him. The teacher announced that there were 2 months left until middle school graduation, prompting a brief round of applause that quickly faded. The teacher continued, emphasizing the importance of thinking about their futures, whether they would attend high school or which high school they would choose. Some students, like 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲, Yagi, and the Todoroki twins, had already applied to UA. Izumi and her friends were taken aback when they learned that Izuku had also applied to UA. Katsuki was the first to react, lunging at Izuku and grabbing him by the collar. He expressed his frustration, questioning why Izuku persisted in his dream of becoming a hero. Izuku simply stared blankly at him. Izumi intervened, demanding that Katsuki let go of Izuku, threatening to report him to UA. She clarified that Izuku had not applied for the hero course but was instead considering the business or support course. The revelation stunned everyone, but Izuku began to laugh, acknowledging that his dream of being a hero had been crushed long ago. He admitted that it was unrealistic for someone like him to aspire to be a hero and expressed his disappointment in thinking that he could escape their torment once they reached UA. He concluded that it would be best for him to go elsewhere to avoid them. Katsuki was taken aback, seeing Izuku on the verge of tears as he looked up at him, still held by the collar. Izumi's eyes filled with tears. At that moment, the teacher, with glowing golden eyes, placed a hand on Katsuki's shoulder, urging him to let Izuku go. Katsuki released Izuku, who trembled as he returned to his seat. The teacher looked down at him with sympathy and suggested he take the day off, assuring him that the principal wouldn't mind. Izuku, however, insisted he was fine and wanted the lesson to continue. The remainder of the day dragged on painfully, with Izuku hoping to be left alone, but his classmates continued to cast glances in his direction as he focused on his notebook. When the final bell rang, Izuku felt the weight of their stares as they loomed over him. They questioned why he hadn't told them he had given up on his dream. Izuku retorted that it wouldn't have changed anything between them. He expressed his disdain, revealing that he still held resentment towards them for their past actions. Izumi was taken aback, unable to comprehend his feelings. As tears streamed down her face, Izuku packed his notebook and walked out. Shoto attempted to stop him, but Izumi shook her head, signaling him to let Izuku go. She understood that it was better this way, accepting that after everything that had happened, it was foolish to think Izuku would consider them anything but strangers. As long as he was safe, he could harbor his feelings of hatred. Izuku wandered the streets with a downcast expression, not yet ready to return home. He sought to clear his mind and avoid his classmates for as long as possible. Entering a grocery store, he browsed the candy section, hoping to calm himself. Suddenly, he heard a crash and commotion near the front of the store. Curiosity got the better of him, and he peeked around the aisle, only to quickly hide again upon seeing a man brandishing a gun at the cashier. The robber demanded that the cashier empty the register, dismissing the presence of heroes nearby. Izuku felt a familiar gnawing sensation in his heart as he watched the store owner comply. His hand instinctively reached for a nearby can, preparing to act. Just then, an elderly man approached with a cane, holding a newspaper. The criminal, irritated by the old man's presence, threatened him, but the old man remained unfazed, engaging the robber in conversation. As the situation escalated, Izuku seized the opportunity. He hurled the can at the criminal, striking him and causing him to fire his weapon wildly. The old man swiftly knocked the gun upward with his cane, then delivered a decisive blow to the criminal's face, incapacitating him. The old man took a moment to catch his breath, while Izuku rushed to check on the cashier, who was hyperventilating. Later, Izuku sat on a park bench, chewing on candy after giving his report to the police. He was passing time before heading home when the old man sat down beside him. Before Izuku could speak, the old man asked why he had chosen to help. Izuku complimented the old man's improved accent, eliciting a growl of mock annoyance from him. Izuku chuckled, explaining that he always felt a gnawing sensation in his heart when witnessing injustice. When someone needs help and no one else steps in, Izuku feels compelled to act, otherwise, he knows he won't find peace at night. Despite his challenges, he strives to do as much as he can. Bruce, an old man sitting nearby, inquired about the bruise on Izuku's arm. Izuku confirmed it was from a recent incident. They shared a moment of silence before Bruce introduced himself simply as Bruce, to which Izuku responded with his own name. Bruce noted Izuku's heroic spirit but questioned whether it aligned with his true desires. Izuku sighed, gazing at the setting sun with a heavy heart. He reflected on how his dreams had been crushed by those who wanted to stifle his ambitions. The pain of his family's attempts to extinguish his hopes had nearly broken him. Bruce observed the young man's clenched fists, noticing the candy he held beginning to crack under the pressure. Izuku declared that nothing would deter him from helping others, whether as a mechanic, businessman, doctor, or lawyer. Bruce recognized the anger radiating from him and cautioned against letting that anger consume him. Izuku acknowledged the truth in Bruce's words, admitting his frustration. Bruce, seeing the resemblance to his own son, urged Izuku not to face his struggles alone. He handed Izuku a card with his contact information, expressing his belief that Izuku would achieve great things. Overwhelmed by emotion, Izuku felt tears welling up at the kindness he had never experienced before. After parting ways with Bruce, Izuku returned home, clutching the card that bore the name Bruce Wayne, which felt oddly familiar. As he entered his house, he was met with the disapproving gazes of his family gathered around the dinner table. Inko, his mother, confronted him with concern, still dressed in her costume. Tashinori, in his casual attire, and Izumi, looking worse for wear, also scrutinized him. Izuku casually replied that he had been at the store, but Inko pressed him about his late return. She expressed her worry, especially after one of their children had been attacked that day. Tashinori pushed a paper across the table, revealing a bold title, Disownment. The document stated that as of that day, Izuku was no longer a Yagi. The boiling rage within him intensified as his parents attempted to justify their decision, but he could only hear a ringing in his ears. They insisted it was for his own good, claiming it was too dangerous for him to remain with them. Izuku countered by pointing out that he had faced danger and emerged unscathed, while his sibling had been caught off guard. Izumi slammed her hand on the table, trying to explain that her situation was different. When Izuku mentioned the notorious villain, FO, his family was taken aback by his knowledge of the name. Izuku expressed his frustration at being treated as fragile, feeling dejected by their words. Inko and Tashinori reassured him that they would not abandon him, stating he would stay with his uncle Aizawa for safety. However, Izuku, feeling betrayed, walked away to his room and slammed the door behind him. Inko and Tashinori sighed, knowing he needed time to process the situation. Moments later, Izuku emerged from his room with 2 backpacks slung over his shoulders, declaring that he was leaving. When Tashinori attempted to stop him, Izuku expressed his resentment towards being forced to live with someone he barely knew. He felt like an orphan in his own home, devoid of family ties. As Tashinori reached out to calm him, Izuku turned and struck him, causing Tashinori to collapse in pain. Seizing the moment, Izuku dashed out the door, running faster than he ever had before, ignoring the calls of his family behind him. Once outside, Izuku found refuge in an alleyway, gasping for breath. He had finally escaped, but he was alone, with no friends or family to turn to. In a moment of desperation, he decided to make one last call before destroying his phone. Pulling out the card Bruce had given him, he dialed the number, holding the phone to his ear as it rang. After a few moments, a voice answered, and Izuku introduced himself as the plain-looking kid who had received the card. It hurt Izuku to remember after that description, and he found himself wondering if Bruce was still offering help. As he looked out to the street, he spotted his sister searching for him. He hid behind a dumpster, watching her as she seemed on the verge of a panic attack. For a brief moment, he considered revealing himself, but memories of her actions and how they made him feel flooded his mind. He turned away and leaned against the dumpster, contemplating his next move. He needed a place to stay for a little while. Izuku couldn't help but stare at the building before him with wide eyes. When the old man had said he could come over after their call, he had expected an apartment, not a mansion. The night was dark, with no moon in sight, as he walked up the steps to ring the bell. The moment he did, loud barks erupted from behind the door, followed by a distant voice calming the dog. The door opened to reveal Bruce, who wore a scowl that softened slightly upon seeing Izuku. Unbeknownst to him, Izuku looked quite disheveled. Bruce's voice was rough as he invited Izuku inside. As Izuku stepped in, he marveled at the vastness of the space, noting the dim lighting and some areas that appeared a bit unkempt, yet it was clear the place had once been magnificent. Bruce eyed Izuku suspiciously, asking if he was running from heroes. Izuku hesitated before responding, revealing that he was more concerned about his family than anything else. He explained that he had been disowned and was about to be sent away to distant relatives. In a moment of anger, he had walked out, and after a brief confrontation he had fled. He had called Bruce before destroying his phone, expressing his longing not to return home. After a moment of silence, Bruce sighed and directed Izuku to a room upstairs, telling him to take as much time as he needed and that they would talk in the morning. Grateful, Izuku nodded and headed up the stairs, while Bruce felt an odd sense of déjà vu as he returned to his own room. The next morning, Izuku was seen munching on toast while Bruce sipped his coffee. They sat at a large dining table, with Ace the Hound lying protectively beneath Bruce's seat. The atmosphere was quiet, neither knowing who should break the silence first. Bruce decided to take the initiative, stating that he was willing to take Izuku in, but both needed to be transparent. He asked Izuku what his purpose was. Confused, Izuku stared at Bruce, unsure of how to respond. Bruce clarified that if he was going to be under his care, he needed to have a goal. He wasn't going to take in someone without ambition. Izuku struggled to answer, reflecting on his long-held dream of becoming a hero, but now he felt lost. Bruce, noticing his hesitation, offered a compromise. Izuku had 1 year to decide what he wanted to be. He would provide funding and classes for whatever Izuku chose, encouraging him to explore different paths without worrying about money. Izuku felt overwhelmed by the old man's generosity but kept his guard up. This was his chance to find a true purpose, and he accepted the offer. Thus began Izuku's journey to become someone more, someone with a purpose. He had hoped to attend universities in Mustafu or a major city, but since he was listed as a missing person, he opted for countryside colleges. While the news outlets were quiet about his identity, they still reported him as missing, with All Might leading the investigation. Eventually, interest in the case waned. Izuku took full advantage of his time in college, immersing himself in a variety of subjects: political science, chemistry, history, sociology, psychology, philosophy, nursing, anatomy, and even English. He enrolled in about 12 classes each semester, including summer and winter sessions. His workload was immense, but he was determined to prove his worth to Bruce. During this time, he discovered that Bruce Wayne was incredibly wealthy, which puzzled him since he had thought Bruce was in his 40s. Nonetheless, Bruce took him to several meetings, teaching him the ropes of business. Izuku eventually focused on 3 main areas: business, medicine, and technology. He envisioned creating a company that would benefit society in various ways, from pharmaceuticals to technology for both heroes and civilians. Bruce approved of his ambitions, lifting the 1-year limit, allowing Izuku to take his time. Izuku continued to push himself academically, balancing his studies with maintaining his physical fitness. Bruce began to involve him in more meetings, and Izuku absorbed everything he learned. As a year passed, the now 15-year-old Izuku volunteered at a nearby children's hospital as part of his medical degree coursework. While he didn't perform any procedures or checkups, since that would be illegal, he was eager to contribute in any way he could. He spent most of his time talking to the children or playing games, genuinely making a difficult situation better for them. This brings us back to the present, where Izuku sat next to a hospital bed, smiling as he engaged with a young girl who was perched on the edge of the bed, her smile tinged with pain. Izuku pointed at pictures in a book, his gentle demeanor contrasting with the hospital setting. He wore a long white coat, and his dark green hair was styled in a short undercut. The girl wore a small beanie shaped like bunny ears, a piece of Miruko merchandise, and her attire consisted of a hospital gown. They were reading a novel detailing Miruko's battles and achievements. Izuku described one of her signature moves, explaining how Miruko had executed a powerful maneuver that sent a villain crashing down, marking her debut as a pro hero. The girl, Eira, expressed her admiration for Miruko, saying how cool she thought the hero was. Izuku chuckled and affectionately patted Eira's head, causing her to squirm slightly, her soft hair a reminder of her fragile state but still holding a hint of strength. Just then, the door opened, revealing another man in a white coat, who bore a resemblance to a penguin. He asked Izuku to accompany him. Izuku agreed, assuring Eira that he would return shortly. As he stepped out, he noticed the doctor's somber expression as he glanced back at the child. The doctor remarked on how much happier Eira seemed. Izuku nodded, but his heart sank when he asked about her condition. The doctor sighed, removing his glasses to clean them, and explained that her illness had reached its final stage. Without a miracle, she had only a few months left. He urged Izuku to make her as comfortable as possible, knowing this was a heavy burden for a first internship. Izuku remained silent, his gaze drifting back to Eira, who was engrossed in her book, a small but pained smile on her face. His fists clenched as a familiar ache surged in his chest, but he pushed it down and re-entered the room with his usual smile, asking where they had left off. Later, Izuku found himself in the back of a limousine, reading a report when the driver initiated small talk. He inquired if Izuku planned to attend the upcoming sports festival, mentioning an impressive batch of competitors, including an electric kid. Izuku looked out the window at the billboards promoting the event, his mood darkening as he recognized some familiar faces. He turned his attention back to his report and asked the driver about Wayne-sensei's return. The driver replied that he should be back by tonight. Izuku continued reading, but upon arriving at the mansion, he tossed his white coat onto the dinner table and sat down, resting his head in his hands. His thoughts were consumed by Eira and her illness, feeling the weight of unfairness pressing down on him. Suddenly, a loud boom shook the house, plunging it into darkness. Izuku cursed under his breath, pulling out his phone to use the flashlight. He muttered about the backup generators failing and set off to find the breaker. As he climbed the stairs, he was startled when a clock swung open, revealing a hidden door. Curiosity piqued, he opened the door to discover a staircase leading into darkness. He descended, using his phone for light, and after what felt like an eternity, he reached a landing. However, darkness still enveloped him, even with the phone's brightness at maximum. As he took a few cautious steps, a mechanical voice announced the activation of backup generators, flooding the area with light. Izuku's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight before him. He stood in a vast cavern filled with advanced technology. Dozens of computers lined one wall, connected to a massive keyboard, while a platform brimming with training equipment stood nearby. Another platform emerged, revealing a workbench cluttered with chemicals, electronics, and various gadgets. A final platform lifted to unveil something covered by a tarp, which appeared to be a car. In awe, Izuku approached the suit that emerged from a pod, recognizing it as a hero costume. It was gray, adorned with armor plates and a mask, complete with pointy ears and a flowing black cape. The bat symbol at the center of the chest captured his attention. He reached out, his finger just inches away from the symbol when a loud noise startled him. He turned to see Bruce standing there, a scowl on his face, his cane raised as if to emphasize his displeasure. Izuku stood frozen, unable to speak, as Bruce commanded him to leave. Izuku looked stunned at Bruce's angry tone, realizing he had stumbled upon something far beyond his understanding. Bruce pressed a button on his cane, causing the suit to retract and disappear beneath the floor. Confusion mingled with awe as Izuku processed the situation. Bruce's anger was palpable, and he insisted that Izuku leave the house immediately, warning him that he had 10 minutes to comply before consequences would follow. Izuku stood there, stunned, as his heart sank with memories of the night he was cast out. He recalled the paper handed to him and how he had run away from those people. His fist tightened at his side as he looked down at the ground. He understood Wayne's words, but the weight of the situation was heavy on him. 2 weeks had passed since that moment, and Izuku had not approached the manor nor left his college. Wayne had arranged a dorm for him, and he had been living there since. Despite the bitterness and anger swirling within him, he kept the secret he had discovered to himself. He felt a mix of emotions not entirely directed at Wayne, but more at himself for ruining things again. The unanswered questions about Bruce Wayne's connection to Batman gnawed at him. How could someone so old still be active in Gotham? Answers seemed elusive, but he knew he had to move on. He needed to prove his worth and succeed, as failure was not an option. He aspired to be more than just successful, he wanted to leave a lasting legacy. As he donned his white doctor's coat, Izuku made his way to the children's hospital, a place where he could clear his mind. He needed to talk to someone. It didn't take long for him to reach the patient he wanted to see. He opened the door to find her on her bed, trying her best to read. Today, her light blue hair bounced as she lay in her Miruko onesie. She looked up with a smile as he entered, excited to see him. Izuku apologized for his absence, explaining he had been busy with side projects and some things on his mind. He asked how his favorite patient had been, hoping for good news. She replied that she had been fine, despite a few attacks here and there. Izuku noticed her cheerful demeanor but felt a frown tug at his lips, knowing she was hiding the truth. She had experienced 8 attacks in just 2 days, and her condition was worsening. Era's illness stemmed from her quirk, which was called gluttony. Unfortunately, it forced her to consume other quirks, using dark tendrils that would rip them away from others, often leaving the targets incapacitated. The challenge of her treatment lay in finding willing volunteers to have their quirks devoured, especially since Era refused to use her own after a traumatic incident during a field trip where her quirk had caused chaos. Her body was deteriorating from starvation, breaking down as it craved the quirks it needed. Izuku was assigned to watch over her, as he lacked a quirk that Era's could consume, making him safe during her outbursts. It was a hopeless situation, compounded by how some staff viewed her as a ticking time bomb rather than the sweet girl she was. As he approached her bed, Era scooted over to make room for him. Once he settled beside her, she clung to his side, trembling. They sat together, watching children's shows on TV until Era looked up at him with her teal eyes and asked if she could become a hero like Miruko if she learned to control her quirk. Izuku froze at the question, memories of his own struggles flooding back. He wanted to protect her from disappointment but was unsure how to respond. Just then, the TV caught their attention, announcing the premiere of a highly anticipated movie about Miruko. Era's eyes sparkled with excitement, and Izuku seized the opportunity to suggest they go see it together. 3 days later, the day of the movie premiere arrived. Era was bundled in her winter coat, complete with a Miruko beanie and gloves resembling the hero's battle gear. Izuku wore a simple winter coat and his iconic red shoes. They walked hand in hand through the snowy streets toward the theater, a small metallic bracelet clinking as Era moved. A quirk dampener allowed them to be outside, a privilege Izuku had fought hard to secure. He didn't dwell on the sacrifices he had made to obtain the tickets, he was focused on Era's joy. She was bubbling with excitement, and he couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. Izuku felt a pang of guilt as he watched Era's cheerful expression. He knew he was a coward for not answering her question. Did he even have an answer? The two eventually arrived at the movie theater and found their seats. While Izuku found the film cheesy, he appreciated the effort put into it. Unfortunately, Miruko, who was with them, had little patience for anything that didn't involve fighting villains, which didn't help the movie's reception. Eira, however, loved every moment, becoming one of those fans who cherished the merchandise regardless of the film's quality. It was adorable. As the movie ended, the duo made their way back to the hospital. Izuku smiled as he carried Eira on his back through the snowy night, listening to her excitedly discuss the film in detail. He chuckled as he took a shortcut through an alley to reach the train station faster. However, his smile faded when he spotted 4 hooded figures in the alley, their faces obscured by masks. One of the men leaned against the wall, a bat resting on his shoulder, and taunted them. Izuku set Eira down behind him, trying to project confidence. He explained that they meant no disrespect and were just trying to get to the station. The thugs scrutinized him, searching for something of value. The main thug, with a sing-song tone, informed Izuku that there was a fee to walk through the alley, especially at night. Izuku felt a growl of frustration rise within him but noticed Eira trembling. To protect her, he reluctantly removed his watch and tossed it to the thug, who caught it and began inspecting it, whistling in approval. Izuku asked if they were good to go, scanning the thugs for any signs of trouble. The main thug, pleased with the watch, allowed them to leave but not before swinging his bat into Izuku's stomach, knocking the wind out of him and forcing him to his knees. The thugs laughed as they walked further down the alley. Eira rushed to Izuku's side, and for the first time, he saw a new emotion on her face, anger. She stood protectively in front of him, channeling her favorite hero. With determination, Eira called out to the thugs, demanding they take something else. She grasped her bracelet, and Izuku's eyes widened as he heard the familiar click of it dropping into the snow. The moment it hit the ground, dark tendrils burst forth, barely contained as if they were wild animals. Eira squeezed her eyes shut in pain, struggling to maintain control. She focused on saving her brother, repeating to herself not to lose control. With a swift punch, Eira sent one of the tendrils latching onto a thug, squeezing tightly. She counted to 2 in her head before retracting the tendril, dropping the thug to the ground. She watched him closely, praying for his well-being, and felt relief when he began to move. The gnawing sensation within her faded, and she fell into a fighter's stance. The thugs attempted to recover by activating their quirks, but Eira grinned, using her own abilities to send 2 of them crashing into the alley wall. She then slammed the main thug to the ground, using her quirk to drain his energy before pulling back, maintaining control. Izuku watched in awe as Eira stood taller than ever, exuding confidence and strength. Turning to Izuku with a wide smile, Eira asked if she could become a hero. His heart swelled with pride as he looked at her, her smile infectious. Just as he began to respond, a series of loud bangs echoed through the alley. Eira's expression shifted as she looked down, noticing 3 red dots appearing on her coat, which began to spread. She turned back to Izuku, BLD escaping her lips as she collapsed into his arms. Izuku's heart raced as he looked up to see the main thug retreating into the darkness, gun in hand. He focused on Eira, who whimpered in pain. Her breaths quickened as she cried out for him to make it stop. He felt tears streaming down his face as he applied pressure to her wounds, hearing the distant sound of sirens approaching. He assessed her injuries, realizing the severity of the situation. Eira's breaths became shallower, her eyes unfocused yet still locked on him. She thanked him for everything, for always being there. Izuku urged her to stay with him, to keep her eyes open. She attempted to lift her hand to touch his face, and he grasped it tightly, trying to reassure her. Eira asked him to promise something, and he nodded, tears blurring his vision. She urged him to live her dream and become a hero. Izuku stood in the dim alley, cradling Eira's lifeless body in his arms. He felt the weight of his sorrow as he promised her to become a hero, a vow that echoed in his heart. Eira's smile lingered in his mind, even as her eyes closed for the last time. The world around him faded as he was taken to the police station, where he recounted the events of that tragic night. He learned of the man who was still on the run, and later, he found himself at the morgue, faced with the harsh reality of her death. Sitting in a chair, he gazed at the white cloth covering her body, his heart heavy with grief. The attendant informed him that Eira had no family, abandoned after a past incident. When asked what to inscribe on her gravestone, Izuku's tears fell as he whispered her name, Eira Midoriya. Days passed like a blur, and Izuku found himself standing before Eira's grave, the inscription stark against the earth. The sunset cast a dull glow over him, mirroring the emptiness he felt inside. He had stopped attending classes and neglected his own needs, feeling numb since that fateful night. The promise he made felt impossible to keep, especially as he reflected on his own limitations. Suddenly he noticed a swarm of bats flying against the sunset, a sight that ignited something within him. His fist clenched tightly as he resolved to honor Eira's memory. Meanwhile, Bruce Wayne was interrupted by a knock at his door. Annoyed, he opened it to find a disheveled Izuku standing there. Bruce's voice was harsh as he told Izuku to leave, but the determination in the boy's eyes caught his attention. Izuku requested training, expressing his longing to become Batman. Bruce hesitated, recognizing the fire in Izuku's gaze that reminded him of his own past. Reluctantly, he invited Izuku inside, knowing that this was only the beginning of a long journey. 6 months later, Izuku trained relentlessly, his fists striking the punching bag with precision. His body had transformed, muscles more defined and stronger than before, yet he bore the marks of his training. Bruce observed from a distance, recording Izuku's progress. In his thoughts, Bruce reflected on the past months since Izuku had returned to the manor. Initially, he had pushed the boy away to protect him from the dangers of his world. But after the tragic incident involving Eira, Izuku had come back, determined to learn and grow. Bruce noted the intensity in Izuku's training, recognizing that the boy was adapting at an astonishing rate. As time passed, Bruce began to suspect that Izuku had awakened a quirk or developed new abilities due to the trauma he experienced. Despite the physical toll of his training, Izuku showed no signs of fatigue or hunger, which intrigued Bruce further. 2 years later, Izuku stood in a courtyard, his strength evident as he effortlessly demolished a training dummy. He had grown taller and more powerful, yet the anger within him remained. Bruce watched from the sidelines, proud yet concerned about the path Izuku was on. The boy who had knocked on his door was now a young man, but the emotional turmoil still loomed over him, a reminder that his journey was far from over. For the last 2 years, Izuku had been learning every fighting style that Bruce could introduce him to. He had also graduated with his MSDR's degree while working on his doctorate, demonstrating an incredible work ethic that seemed unyielding. Bruce pondered if Izuku was truly the right one for the task at hand, but he quickly buried the thought as he pulled out a voice recorder. He began documenting his observations. After careful examination of Izuku, Bruce had finally figured out the source of the unusual enhancements in him. BLD tests revealed no quirk or signs of mutation, no meta ability, no drags, no enhancements, absolutely nothing in the scientific realm. After consulting with Zatanna and inspecting Izuku, she confirmed that he had been blessed with a virtue, the virtue of temperance. It appeared that as Eira was nearing her end, she granted Izuku one final gift to help him fulfill her wish. Though she possessed only a small amount of magical potential, it was enough to bestow this blessing upon him. Temperance stood in stark contrast to gluttony. Through rigorous testing, Bruce discovered the limits of this gift. He confirmed that it could not be trained to last longer, as it was not something Izuku could develop further. Currently, Izuku could go 1 month without food before feeling the effects of starvation, 3 weeks without water, and over a month without sleep. His recovery speed was approximately 1.5 times faster than that of a normal human, and his healing abilities had similarly increased. It remained unknown whether this blessing would affect his aging. Izuku had also started his own company, thanks to loans from Bruce and investments from others. He quickly became a multimillionaire with just the foundational ideas of his business. At this pace, he was on track to rival Bruce's wealth, especially once he re-entered society. Due to his funding, a contingency plan was in place in case he went rogue, freezing his assets. Izuku had mastered half of the world's martial arts forms, and with his blessing, it wouldn't be long before he learned the rest. Given his mastery of various martial arts, Bruce's contingency plan would likely involve calling the Bat Colony to intervene, unless Izuku evolved further. Japan had faced turmoil since their departure, with a group known as the League of Villains freeing numerous villains across the country. Chaos ensued as villains ran rampant, exacerbated by many heroes quitting. Typically, the Justice League would intervene, but Bruce had ordered them to stay away due to the main villain's quirk, decay, which could incapacitate anyone with a single touch. This threat had taken out more than half the League, both active and reserve members. Bruce had also instructed Clark and Diana to remain out of the conflict. The League could not afford to lose either of them. Fortunately, the heroes managed to defeat the villains, but Japan was still struggling to rebuild. It was a perfect opportunity for someone to step in and assist the country, whether as a millionaire or something more heroic. Izuku unleashed a powerful punch, knocking a monk back and leaving him winded. The scene expanded to show that Izuku had defeated all his opponents with minimal damage. Bruce observed with narrowed eyes, while Izuku huffed, glancing down at the fallen monks with a look of dissatisfaction, knowing he wasn't quite ready yet. 4 years later, a limousine came to a stop in front of a building in downtown Tokyo, evident by the signs around them. The vehicle halted before the largest building, and the driver opened the door. A young man with vibrant green hair stepped out, immediately drawing the attention of passers-by. His height, around 6 feet 3 inches, made him stand out even more. The young man stood outside Might Tower, the former headquarters of All Might, now a cornerstone of the hero community. He buried his emotions deep within as a young woman in business attire, with pink hair tied in a high ponytail and yellow eyes scanning the building, fell in line behind him. Together, they walked into the building, the woman still observing her surroundings while the man approached the counter. The receptionist greeted him, asking how she could assist. With a confident smile, he requested that upper management be informed to clear the building, declaring that Might Tower no longer existed and he wanted everyone gone. Stunned, the receptionist regained her composure and questioned his authority for such a request. He calmly placed an invoice and a business card on the desk, introducing himself as Izuku Midoriya, the new owner of the building as of 8 a.m. He insisted that he wanted everything and everyone out by lunchtime. Now, at 21 years old, Izuku surveyed Japan from the top room of his building, the former CEO's office, which had been left bare. As he gazed out the window, the pink-haired woman returned, announcing that she had accomplished her task. Izuku expressed his excitement about starting his first step in helping to rebuild the country. Mei smiled, standing beside him, recalling how she had once thought his ideas were more insane than her own. However, she now recognized the vision he had. Izuku teased that his bank account had helped clarify his intentions, prompting a laugh from Mei. She pointed out a potential issue, suggesting that the building might not be large enough for his plans. Understanding her implication, Izuku chuckled and assured her that he had already purchased a warehouse with access to numerous networks, alleviating any concerns about size. With a bright smile, he revealed that he had bought the entire block. Together, they stood ready to change the world. The chime of the opening station played as the card for Good Morning Japan appeared, transitioning to the hosts, a striking blue-haired woman and what appeared to be a polar bear. The woman introduced herself with enthusiasm, stating her name was Yoruchi Kaza, while the bear responded as Hikage Todo. Kaza smiled at the camera and mentioned that they needed to discuss the person who was currently the talk of the country. The screen updated to show a picture of Izuku Midoriya waving at the camera while stepping out of a limousine. Kaza informed the audience that a new billionaire had emerged, making waves in his first week in Japan. Izuku Midoriya had made headlines by purchasing Might Tower for nearly 49 billion yen, along with every other building on the block. This acquisition sparked controversy due to the tower's cultural significance and its connection to today's heroes. Although it had been years since All Might used it as his base, it remained the headquarters of the current #1 hero. Despite the backlash, Midoriya's intentions to aid Japan were acknowledged. Todo continued, explaining that Midoriya had declared himself the primary funder and planner for the reconstruction of Japan following the villain war from 7 years ago. With only about 25% of the damage repaired, the government had focused on restructuring the Hero Association. The public appreciated Midoriya's commitment to rebuilding efforts. In a recent press conference, Midoriya outlined various industries he aimed to improve, including medicine, disease research, engineering, construction, humanitarian efforts, education, homeless shelters, environmental efforts, marine biology, quirk therapy, quirk research, support manufacturing, and hero programs. When questioned about funding, he responded with laughter, indicating confidence in his plans. The scene shifted to Izuku, who was watching the broadcast while dressed in a formal suit. He sat in a large chair in front of a high-tech computer, surrounded by boxes and crates in the cave where he had discovered his secret life. As he worked on the computer, he heard the tapping of a cane and turned to see Bruce, who regarded him with intrigue. It had been years since Bruce trained him, and now Izuku had grown into a man. Bruce simply stated, "Tonight," and walked away. Izuku understood that tonight would mark the beginning of his crusade. He had established his daytime identity, and now it was time to embrace his nighttime role. Later, a figure in a hoodie navigated the streets of a rough district in Tokyo, still recovering from the war. The hooded individual wore a mask to conceal his identity, and passers-by might have assumed he was up to no good. This was Izuku, embarking on his first night out as a vigilante, not under any alias, but simply as someone determined to make a difference. Hearing a scream from an alley, Izuku jogged toward the sound. He paused at the entrance, witnessing a woman being forced against the wall by a man, with 3 others watching with malicious intent. Unable to detect any visible quirks, Izuku decided to act the old-fashioned way. He picked up a loose brick from the ground and charged at the gang. Before the closest thug could react, Izuku struck him with the brick, sending him to the ground. As the others began to react, Izuku delivered 2 quick punches to another thug, bringing him to his knees, while simultaneously kicking the man assaulting the woman in the back of the knee, causing him to stumble. Izuku finished his swift assault with a roundhouse kick to the last thug, rendering him unconscious. Not allowing the remaining assailants a chance to recover, Izuku swiftly approached the man closest to the woman, grabbing him by the back of the head and slamming it into the wall. He then executed a spinning kick to the last thug, knocking him down. Taking a moment to catch his breath, Izuku turned his attention to the woman, who was trembling and hugging herself tightly, her torn clothes revealing her distress. He had arrived just in time to prevent any serious harm, but she was still shaken. Crouching down to her eye level, Izuku asked if she was okay. She flinched at his movement, prompting him to remain still. After taking a few calming breaths and glancing at the unconscious attackers, she managed to respond, though her voice trembled as she recalled the ordeal. Izuku spoke softly, encouraging her to focus on his voice, and asked for her name. Before she could answer, a sudden shout interrupted them. Izuku instinctively dove to the side, narrowly avoiding a beam of energy that shot past him. He turned to see one of the thugs he had knocked out struggling to stand. Rushing toward the man, Izuku aimed to finish him with a punch, but the thug created a small energy shield that absorbed the blow, causing Izuku to wince from the recoil. Nevertheless, his punch was powerful enough to crack the shield. Ignoring the pain, he punched through it, landing a solid hit on the thug's cheek. He then mounted the thug and delivered a series of strikes until the man stopped moving, ensuring he was incapacitated but not dead. Catching his breath, Izuku turned back to the woman, asking if she was all right. His voice faltered as he noticed a stray energy beam had struck her in the chest, leaving her in a state of shock. It was the beam he dodged, meant for him. Izuku put his finger to her neck, trying to feel a pulse, but found nothing. He clenched his fist, feeling the fire in his heart grow stronger. The police arrived soon after and took the thugs into custody. Izuku returned to the cave that night, staring despondently at the computer displaying the life of the woman. Bruce appeared behind him, observing with a neutral expression. His wrist was broken, and he felt the weight of his failure. Her name was Maiko. She had died because of him. Bruce sighed, resting himself on a crate. She had perished due to the thug's quirk, but his negligence had contributed to her fate. Bruce reminded Izuku that he was human, unlike the heroes he admired. He lacked indestructible skin, the ability to shoot lasers, or the speed to bend time. He was just human, And tonight was a lesson in the harsh reality that sometimes, no matter how much one trains, it may not be enough, and mistakes can lead to tragic consequences. Izuku gazed at a photo of Maiko, her arms around a small child, with a man embracing them both. He memorized the address as he closed his eyes and looked down, clenching his fist even tighter, ignoring the pain. He acknowledged his understanding. Bruce instructed him to come so he could cast his arm and mentioned having a gift for him. Confused, Izuku followed Bruce until they reached a platform. The ground shook as a pod emerged, reminiscent of the one where he had found Bruce's old costume. The pod opened, and Izuku's eyes widened in disbelief, feeling tears well up. Bruce confirmed it was indeed something to level the playing field. Izuku hesitated to reach out, fearing it might vanish like a mirage. It was a Batman suit, adorned with a glowing red symbol on the chest and a black cowl that transformed into a full mask. This was the Batman Beyond suit, specifically the Arkham Knight version. Bruce reminded him that tonight he was just someone trying to make a difference, but tomorrow he would become Batman. The suit hissed as it adjusted to his body, releasing excess air for a perfect fit. Izuku heard the sounds of machinery locking into place, the plates shifting seamlessly and separating at the joints for movement. The chest plate settled, showcasing the red bat symbol that seemed to glow. As he flexed his wrists and clenched his fists, the metal covering his forearms glowed red, causing him to raise an eyebrow. The spikes on the forearms retracted and extended with his movements, and flicking his wrists revealed claws that emerged from his fingertips. A red cape unfurled from his back, appearing to float behind him like particles. The cowl enveloped his face, giving him a menacing appearance with a dark metal plate covering his mouth and his eyes glowing pure white. The legs were equally armored, with the same red glow extending to his feet and calves. As Izuku clenched his fists, a heads-up display appeared in his mask, displaying a series of numbers and symbols. Bruce explained that this was the Beyond Mark II, one of the most advanced suits created for the family. It was heavily armored to protect vital organs while allowing for movement. He was now resistant to bullets up to 50 caliber round and highly protected against extreme temperatures, electrical attacks, and blunt force trauma. Bruce tapped a corner near the back of the helmet, causing it to open and free Izuku's face. He reassured Izuku that it would only open for him and that the suit linked to his thoughts. Bruce instructed him to close the mask again, which clicked back into place, and then demonstrated how to retract the mouth portion while keeping the top part on. The mask allowed for various vision modes, including detective vision and infrared, and could access radio frequencies. Bruce then tapped Izuku's chest, causing a stream of red energy to flow across the suit, making him feel slightly stronger. The suit absorbed kinetic energy from attacks and movements, converting it into power. After sustaining a few hits, Izuku's punches could potentially break through steel. The suit also allowed him to create different types of energy for offensive or defensive purposes. Izuku punched his fists together, causing red electricity to crackle between them, a smile spreading across his face as he watched the currents dance. Bruce frowned, gripping his cane tightly, concerned about the implications of Izuku's newfound power. Izuku expressed his gratitude, feeling empowered and ready to make a difference. However, Bruce warned him that with such an attitude he might not last long in this line of work. Confused, Izuku sought clarification, realizing that Bruce had not given him the suit to become a superhero. Bruce emphasized the importance of the suit, explaining that it was meant to make a difference in the country, but only the person wearing it could truly fulfill that purpose. He placed the end of his cane on the bat symbol on Izuku's chest, stating that the symbol meant nothing without someone worthy to use it. A suit, no matter how powerful, was still just a suit. Anyone could wear the cowl and claim to be Batman, but they had to prove they deserved it. Bruce had given Izuku the suit to level the playing field, reminding him that beneath the suit he was still human. He asked if Izuku understood, to which Izuku nodded firmly, affirming his comprehension. Bruce encouraged him to make a difference. On a stormy night, 3 men dressed in hoodies scanned their surroundings as they entered a convenience store. Unbeknownst to them, a figure stood on a rooftop, watching over the street. Lightning illuminated Izuku, fully clad in the suit, his once white eyes now glowing a deep red. Inside the store, the men noticed only the cashier, a large rabbit woman. They quickly donned masks, and one of them brandished a gun, startling her. The others began to knock items over and stuff valuables into bags. The man with the gun menaced the cashier, urging her to empty the register before things escalated. She complied, trembling as she opened the register and filled a grocery bag with cash. The man grinned behind his mask, ready to pull the trigger. Suddenly, the sound of the door chiming interrupted the tense atmosphere. The men turned to see a cloaked figure entering, hunched and unsteady as they made their way to the back. The thugs dismissed the figure, assuming it was just an old man, unaware of the cameras that had gone to static. The thug with the gun ordered one of his companions to handle the cloaked figure. As the thug approached, he demanded the old man get on the floor, but to his surprise, the figure did not budge. Confused, he felt something metallic beneath the cloak. The cloaked figure then stood tall, towering over the thug. The cloak swirled like dust, revealing glowing red eyes. A metallic hand shot out, grabbing the thug's face and slamming him into the fridge, knocking him out and leaving a trail of destruction. Red energy began to surge up the cloaked figure's arm, signaling the start of a charge. Izuku stomped his foot, unleashing a burst of purple energy while tossing a metallic object at the thug with the gun, knocking it from his hand. The lights flickered ominously as Izuku rushed at the remaining thugs. He grabbed one by the shoulders and hurled him into a ceiling light, causing it to shatter as he fell to the ground. Izuku then stomped on the thug's head, rendering him unconscious. With determination, Izuku charged at the last thug, shoulder-checking him into the counter, which cracked under the impact. As the thug cried out in pain, Izuku seized him by the neck and tossed him to the floor just as the lights flickered back on. The broken light cast an eerie glow around Izuku, enhancing his intimidating presence as he approached the final thug, who scrambled to grab the fallen gun and fired at Izuku in a panic. Izuku advanced steadily, allowing the bullets to ricochet off him effortlessly. With each impact, red veins pulsed beneath his skin, causing the bat symbol on his chest to glow brighter. The sound of an empty gun echoed in the store as Izuku loomed over the thug, who felt increasingly vulnerable. Izuku then slammed his foot down on the thug's chest, knocking him onto his back. Red electricity crackled from Izuku's foot, and the thug screamed as he lost consciousness. Turning to the cashier, Izuku noticed her fear. She pleaded with him to take the money and not to hurt her. Hesitating for a moment, he reached for her but instead retrieved the batarang he had used earlier, securing it back in his belt before leaving. Stepping outside, he used a grapple gun to ascend to the rooftop. Moments later, police and heroes arrived at the scene. Izuku gazed down at the convenience store, reflecting on the fear he instilled in both the criminals and the cashier. He understood that he didn't need to be loved or admired. His goal was to strike fear into the hearts of those who threatened others. He had a symbol of hope that had failed, and now it was time to show the villains why he was Batman. In a report titled, Babel Protocol, Subsection Bat Colony, Entry 23, Addendum 15, it was noted that Izuku Midoriya had officially taken on the role of Batman. He was not the first to wear the cowl since the author had been afflicted with a condition. PP had tried the role but decided it wasn't for him after a year. Jason had not been given the chance, while Tim had refused the offer outright. Duke was not ready, Cassandra did not acknowledge the request, and Stephanie did not respond. The consensus was that the mantle belonged to Damian, who had become the Batman of Gotham. The author expressed uncertainty about how others would react to the choice of a new Batman after all they had done for him. If it weren't for his ability to age slowly, he might not have survived the transition. Izuku showed great promise in combat and detective work, particularly in analysis. Unlike the others, he possessed the most advanced suit in the family, which was intended to provide him with a disadvantage. The author feared that Izuku's anger could lead him down a dark path, similar to Jason. Therefore, the Beyond suit was equipped with several failsafes to neutralize him if necessary. It was a test to see if he would start relying too much on technology instead of his own skills. There were high hopes for the young hero, and it was hoped that none of the contingencies for him would need to be used. Rain poured heavily over Tokyo during the late evenings of the weekend, particularly around the dock area. It had been about 2 weeks since a vigilante had allegedly made their appearance in Japan. All that was known were the frightened whispers of villains speaking of a robotic bat, yet there was no video, photos, or anything to substantiate the claims. Thus, a new urban legend had emerged in Japan. After all, why would Batman be in Japan? A thug guarding a shipment took a long drag from his cigarette, seeking refuge under the roof of one of the many sheds in the docks. He was just an ordinary man down on his luck, forced to make choices that led him to work for unsavory people. He sighed and flicked the cigarette away, preparing to return to duty when suddenly, a cable wrapped around his torso, pulling him upward without a sound. 2 guards patrolled the docks, scanning the incoming boats with rifles in hand. One guard froze as he heard a disturbance in the water and slowly approached, shining his flashlight into the depths, unaware that his partner had vanished. The water settled, revealing a batarang floating, which confused the thug until 2 hands emerged from the wooden dock, pulling him beneath the surface. The remaining guards stood outside the large wooden doors of a warehouse, looking bored and tired as they lazily held their rifles. Neither noticed the small discs attached to the sides of their guns. One guard expressed his frustration about the next shipment, while the other dismissed him, insisting he didn't have the clearance to know. Suddenly, a figure leaped from the roof of the warehouse, landing with a thud that startled the guards. The figure stood tall, adorned with a glowing red bat symbol and piercing red eyes. As rain bounced off the armor, the guards exchanged nervous glances. The figure advanced, prompting the guards to raise their rifles. They fired, but an electric shock coursed through them, rendering them unconscious. The vigilante walked past the fallen guards and pushed open the warehouse door, revealing a scene filled with cargo containers. As the vigilante's vision shifted, his eyes turned blue, and he clenched his fist. He approached one of the containers and peeled it open effortlessly. Inside, he discovered a horrifying sight. Children, mostly girls ranging from infants to teenagers, were cuffed to the sides of the container, victims of a sick trade. The girls recoiled in fear at the sight of the figure. The vigilante paused, contemplating his next move, before crouching down to the nearest girl and extending a hand. She flinched, terrified, but he gently shattered her chains with a firm grip, surprising her and the others. He reassured them softly, revealing his green eyes and removing the mouth portion of his mask. With care, he freed the remaining girls, who began to trust him. After ensuring their safety, he moved to the second container, freeing a group of women of various ages, then proceeded to the third and fourth containers, liberating boys and men. Fortunately, the last 2 containers were decoys. He gathered everyone together and secured the guards in a corner. As he adjusted his mask and returned his red eyes, a little girl approached him. He instructed her to join the others, assuring her that the police would arrive soon. The girl hugged his leg tightly, expressing her gratitude. He stood still, feeling a warmth in his heart as he ruffled her hair gently. As she returned to the group, he prepared to leave, boosting himself into the sky with thrusters before launching a grappling hook toward a nearby building. Batman landed on the hood of a speeding car, causing a dent as it swerved wildly. The driver, startled, shouted in disbelief. The thug attempted to create a weapon to attack Batman, but the vigilante swiftly grabbed his wrist and pulled him from the vehicle, crashing through the roof and landing in the back seat. Batman pinned the driver against the steering wheel before kicking the back of the driver's seat, immobilizing him. He then punched the door open, slamming his palm onto the pavement, bringing the car to a screeching halt. After grabbing a phone that immediately hacked into the system, revealing locations of more warehouses, he discarded it and readied his grappling hook just as a police car turned the corner. But by then he had vanished. A line of thugs aimed their rifles at a wooden door in an apartment, having turned several tables on their sides for cover. Their expressions reflected uncertainty and fear as they held their weapons steady, waiting for whatever lay beyond the door. They were expecting a shipment, but it had been intercepted, according to the news. Now, all they heard in different parts of the apartment complex they controlled were gunshots followed by an unsettling silence. Terrified, they aimed at the door, knowing that the absence of sound meant that whoever they were fighting had either been defeated or had emerged victorious. With no response on the radio, They feared the worst. Their heartbeats quickened as they heard heavy, metallic footsteps approaching down the hall, each step sending chills down their spines. When the footsteps stopped at the door, they began to sweat, and then the power went out. In a panic, they opened fire at the door, the flashes illuminating the darkness. Suddenly, a series of booms echoed as the floor beneath them collapsed, sending them crashing into another empty apartment. As the thugs groaned in confusion, a pair of red eyes appeared, accompanied by a glowing red bat symbol. Batman charged at the nearest thug, knocking the gun aside and delivering a powerful punch to the gut that sent the thug nearly to the ceiling. Batman then seized him and hurled him through a nearby wall. Before the thug even landed, Batman leaped toward the next two, grabbing them and tossing them out the window, where they were ensnared by a hook and net, unbeknownst to the other thugs. One thug aimed his rifle at the red symbol and opened fire, but Batman sidestepped and lunged, seizing the gun by the barrel and forcing it to fire into the floor. He then struck the thug in the face, incapacitating him, before grabbing the back of the thug's head and slamming it down. The last three thugs aimed their guns at Batman's back. With a flick of his wrist, Batman produced 3 batarangs and turned, throwing them at the thugs, knocking their weapons from their hands. He rushed the nearest thug, slamming him into a sink. Dodging a wild punch, Batman grabbed the thug at the waist and executed a suplex, sending him crashing through a cupboard. The lights flickered back on, revealing the last thug on his knees, trembling as he looked up at Batman, who had reappeared with his cape materializing around him, enhancing his intimidating presence. Batman advanced toward the thug, who tried to crawl away, but was swiftly grabbed by the collar and lifted to Batman's eye level, their gazes locking. The thug struggled to find his footing, his feet dangling above the ground. Desperately pleading for his life, the thug begged for mercy, but Batman demanded to know the location of his hostage. The thug, panicking, shouted that he didn't know, but Batman's grip tightened, and the sound of a finger breaking echoed in the room. With a warning that he still had 9 more fingers, Batman pressed for answers. The thug finally revealed that she was at the new 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐸𝐿 ward, Sunrise Apartments, room. Batman threatened to break the thug's other hand if he was lying, and with a swift motion, he did just that before slamming the thug to the ground and knocking him out. Batman leaped out the window and grappled away toward the location. Meanwhile, another thug burst through a door and landed on a coffee table, startling a man who had just exited the bathroom. The man attempted to flee, but Batman threw a pellet that ensnared his leg, freezing him in place. However, the man was not the target. Batman approached the bed and found a young teenage girl lying limp on the sheets. His fists clenched as he carefully wrapped her in the white sheets and laid her on the floor. Turning his attention to the man, Batman seized him by the throat, demanding to know why he had harmed the girl. The man stammered that she had come onto him, claiming it wasn't his fault she couldn't handle it. Batman's grip tightened, and the man's face began to change color as he struggled to breathe. Just as rage threatened to consume him, images of a young girl crossed Batman's mind, prompting him to release his grip. As ambulance sirens wailed outside, Batman picked up the girl's body and walked out. When the ambulance doors opened, 2 paramedics stepped out, surprised by the scene before them. Batman approached, carrying the girl in a gentle manner that evoked a sense of remorse rather than fear. He informed them that her name was Kara Kudo, aged 17, and that she had suffered an overdose and assault. He indicated that the culprit was still upstairs with a few thugs. As the paramedics began to check the girl's condition, Batman turned to leave when one of them called out, asking who he was. He paused for a moment before responding, simply stating that he was Batman. Izuku Midoriya sat at his desk, staring at the headline on his computer screen. The morning sun shone brightly on the city as he read about the CEO of Soretta Industries being found in 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐸𝐿 ward with a deceased minor in an apartment. The article detailed the charges against CEO Hiro Soretta, including murder, assault, and drag possession. Despite reading the article, Izuku felt a sense of dissatisfaction, as if he wanted something more to happen. As he pondered the article, the door opened, revealing May in a pencil skirt and pink blouse, a smudge of oil on her cheek that he chose not to mention. It was a unique look for Izuku's college roommate, as she usually wore a tank top and sweats. But sometimes, a woman just wanted to look pretty. Izuku turned his chair to look out the window, standing up while still gazing at the city with a neutral expression. He asked if their company owned or operated a rehabilitation center. Mei, looking confused, checked her tablet and confirmed they had villain rehabilitation and hero injury rehabilitation. When Izuku inquired about anything else, she replied there was not. He hummed thoughtfully and then instructed her to start looking into rehabilitation organizations. For potential acquisition, expressing a longing to establish an addiction rehab branch of their company. Mei noted that while it might not be highly profitable, it could enhance their popularity. She wondered about his sudden interest, but Izuku remained silent, lost in thought. She offered her support if he ever needed to talk and promised to have a report ready by the end of the day before stepping out, leaving Izuku alone with his reflections. In a high-rise hotel, the thriving underworld of Japan convened. After the villain war, one might expect a decrease in crime, and while the number of villains had indeed diminished, the remnants of the Yakuza and other gangs took advantage of the situation, carving up Japan as they pleased. The heroes had defeated the worst villain in history, but that power vacuum allowed the greatest gangs to rise. Corruption within the Hero Association had become a significant issue, leading to rampant corruption in other areas of society, leaving heroes powerless to intervene. This was why Batman had come to Japan. The heads of all the gangs gathered for their annual meeting to discuss a new problem that had emerged about a month ago, something they initially thought minor but feared could spiral out of control. A bat problem. As the guests mingled, making deals and discussing unspeakable matters, a metallic hand knocked on the large oval wooden table, silencing the room. The figure at the head of the table, known as Golden, had a body made of pure gold, resembling a walking statue with minimal facial features. Dressed in a formal black suit adorned with gold accents, he commanded attention with a strong voice that echoed despite his lack of visible mouth movement. He began the meeting by addressing the recent hits their trafficking rings had taken, particularly their worker operations. In the past month, at least 10 warehouses had been attacked, resulting in a significant loss. Golden emphasized that while it seemed like a small issue, if left unaddressed, it could lead to much larger problems. He identified the source of their troubles as a new bat, tapping his finger on the table to signal a henchman to activate a holographic display. The video showed a shaky perspective from a thug in a warehouse, clearly frightened. Suddenly, a figure landed in front of them, revealing the red bat symbol and a towering silhouette. The video paused, and the figure was rendered in 3D, showcasing Batman in all his glory. One of the attendees remarked on the differences between this Batman and the one from Gotham, noting his more futuristic appearance. Another figure in the back suggested he might be a new member of the family, as the others were accounted for in Gotham. An older man with an eye patch reminisced about the original Batman's movements, expressing a longing to eliminate this new threat. Golden then displayed a wanted sign for Batman, offering a bounty of $2 billion for anyone who could bring him down. Shifting the topic, Golden presented a picture of Izuku Midoriya from a magazine, highlighting his recent rise as a playboy billionaire who had already taken control of a significant portion of industries in Japan. He expressed concern over Izuku's intentions to reform the country, which could threaten their operations. He ordered his associates to find or fabricate dirt on Izuku to bring him under their influence, warning them of the consequences if they failed. As the meeting continued, the camera panned away from the penthouse, revealing a shimmering presence on the adjacent rooftop. Batman emerged from the shadows, his deep yellow eyes indicating he had been listening in. He readied his grappling hook and took off into the night, prepared to confront the challenges ahead. He still had a lot of work to finish before dawn. He could discuss this with Mei and Bruce later. 5 poker cards were tossed onto a table, eliciting several groans. One player declared that they should read and weep, while another accused him of cheating. The atmosphere was tense, filled with banter and frustration. The man collected the chips as the dealer began another round. They were in a living room, which would have seemed ordinary if not for the numerous guns scattered across several tables and at least 3 pallets of drags. 5 thugs were present, 4 were engrossed in the poker game while the 5th counted cash. The clock on the wall indicated it was around 2 a.m. One thug remarked that they were late, and another dismissed his worries, suggesting that he would live longer if he stopped fretting. The third thug expressed concern about their pay, stating that any further delay could jeopardize it. As one thug lit a cigarette, he muttered that the missing member was probably off chasing a high. They took a long drag before the lights suddenly went out. One thug complained about the broken breaker, and another, nicknamed Chub, was ordered to check it. Grumbling, Chub stood up and made his way to the back of the house. He passed through the kitchen and approached a closet, turning on his phone light as he opened the door. While he fiddled with the switches, he failed to notice the back door was ajar. Before he could restore the lights, an arm encircled his neck and pulled him away, causing his phone to drop with a thud that caught the attention of the others. Now armed with flashlights, two thugs were instructed to check on Chub while the supposed leader grabbed a rifle from the table and began loading it. When they entered the kitchen, they found Chub's phone on the floor. Confused, one thug exclaimed that Chub was missing. Receiving no response heightened their anxiety as they returned to the living room, only to find it empty, with the rifle and flashlight abandoned. Their hearts raced as fear took hold, and they scanned the room, aiming their handguns at every shadow. Unbeknownst to them, a shadowy figure had emerged, silently stalking toward them. Metal hands seized the back of their heads and knocked them together, rendering them unconscious. The figure dropped them on the floor and clicked a device on its forearm, illuminating the room once more. Batman surveyed the drags, logging them into his system and calculating their value before retrieving a spray gun. He applied a blue foam to each pallet, then dragged the thugs outside, tying them up just as the police arrived. With a press of a button, he triggered an explosion that obliterated the drags before disappearing into the night with his grappling gun. Inside Episode B, a man was thrown through a table as Batman evaded a baseball bat and delivered a powerful punch to another thug, knocking him out instantly. He continued through the back rooms until he kicked open a door, revealing a young man who looked bewildered. A batarang was thrown, pinning him to the wall, and he screamed in distress as Batman moved past him to find an unconscious teenage girl on the bed. His eyes glowed blue as he nodded, lifting her in a bridal carry. A voice interrupted, demanding the girl be returned, claiming to have paid for her. Batman silenced the man with a batarang that delivered a shock. Exiting through the back door, he halted as a figure appeared at the end of the alleyway. Batman's database quickly identified the figure, and he felt a surge of unease. The man resembled a lion, both in appearance and demeanor. The self-proclaimed hero introduced himself as Lionheart, boasting about his abilities and asserting that he would save the girl and return her to her boyfriend. Batman's piercing gaze met Lionheart's, and with a metallic sigh, he gently placed the girl down, discreetly attaching a small bat tracker and a large box that generated a protective energy shield around her. Lionheart smirked, his claws extending as he prepared for a fight. Batman fell into a defensive stance, ready to confront this supposed hero. The Lion Man lunged, swinging his arm with lethal intent. Batman sidestepped, delivering precise strikes to Lionheart's elbow and shoulder, causing him to roar in pain. As the fight escalated, Lionheart's claws grazed Batman's chest, leaving a mark beneath the bat symbol. The Lion Man continued his relentless assault, swinging wildly as Batman adopted a defensive posture, absorbing the blows on his forearms. Lionheart grew overconfident and attempted to leap onto Batman, exposing his front. In that moment, the red hue of Batman's armor glowed ominously, signaling a shift in the battle. Batman delivered a powerful punch to the lower chest, causing a significant crack and a surge of red to erupt from the impact area. The lion, nearly knocked off his feet, managed to regain his balance, staggering away from Batman. Batman followed up with a kick to the knee, causing it to buckle, and then landed an uppercut that sent several fangs flying from the lion's mouth. The lion was on the brink of losing consciousness, his knees giving way, but before he could collapse, Batman lifted him by the chest, gripping him tightly. He slammed the lion against the alley wall, causing another wave of red, and the wall crumbled around the unconscious figure. Batman took a moment to control his breathing as the red glow between his armored plates faded. He looked down at his forearms, realizing he needed to improve. He should have performed better against such a weak opponent. He had to be better. Batman opened the cocoon and picked up the girl once more, making his way toward the hospital, leaving the defeated hero behind. The next morning, a plane landed at the airport in Tokyo, greeted by the cheers of thousands. The excitement grew as the doors opened, revealing a figure stepping out, prompting the crowd's cheers to intensify. It was Izumi, the OFA hero, the hero of the villain war, and the newest member of the Justice League. Although she was part of the reserves, she was still a valued member. Having just returned from a mission in space, she was unaware of the events that had unfolded over the past month. As she descended the steps, her long green hair flowed behind her, and she waved to the crowd before entering the back of a limousine. She expressed her relief at feeling normal gravity again. Inside the limo, her secretary exchanged glances with the driver before he began to drive. The secretary informed Izumi that she had been called to Hero headquarters, as many developments had occurred during her absence. Izumi hummed to herself as the limo made its way to the HQ, acknowledging that there would be no rest for her. Upon arriving, Izumi took her seat at the round table of the top 10 heroes, greeting her friends warmly after a month apart. However, she noticed their strange expressions. The new president of the Hero Association entered, with Hawks taking his place at the head of the table. He thanked everyone for attending, especially Izumi, and explained that the meeting was necessary despite her longing for rest. Izumi leaned forward, her demeanor shifting to serious as Hawks activated a hologram displaying statistics. He reported on the progress made in addressing corruption within the Hero Association and reconstructing the Safety Commission. However, a new issue had arisen. Crime was on the rise, particularly organized crime, filling the void left by AFO. Their mission was to dismantle these gangs before they gained more power, though Hawks expressed concern that it might already be too late. Hawks clicked the projector again, revealing an image of Batman, which puzzled most of the heroes, as it looked different from the Batman they had known. For Izumi, it was unlike the one she had met. Hawks explained that it had been about 10 years since the original Batman had vanished, and 5 since the trenchcoat version appeared. Now, a second Batman was operating in Japan, and while he would typically consider offering him a hero license, he had contacted the Batman in Gotham, who confirmed that none of his family were in Japan. This new figure was an independent vigilante who had already attacked several heroes, leaving 2 in critical condition. Although those heroes were under investigation for corruption, Hawks felt his hands were tied. He declared that this Batman of Japan was to be considered a villain and must be apprehended immediately. The heroes nodded in agreement, and Hawks sighed as he clicked the button again, displaying the symbol of an M overlapping an I, which transformed into Midoriya Industries. He explained that Izuku Midoriya, the new billionaire, had caused quite a stir. Initially, his contributions to repair efforts were appreciated, but he had begun to overstep his boundaries, buying several hero agencies and dismissing their heroes. It appeared he might start his own hero organization, potentially undermining the efforts to restore the Hero Association. Hawks emphasized the need to engage with him politically, urging the heroes to work together, except for Izumi, as he believed it was unwise for her to approach him. Izumi was taken aback, questioning why she couldn't be involved. Hawks revealed that Might Tower had been purchased by Izuku Midoriya. As she processed this shocking news, her friends, Shoto and Bakugo, held her shoulders, but she was enveloped in a green light as her quirk activated, her eyes glowing with determination. Izuku sat at his desk, reading a journal filled with designs from Mei's lab. He was tasked with reviewing them for approval and checking for errors. So far, he had found nothing, likely due to his lack of sleep over the past week. Thankfully, his grace kept him functioning, though he knew he might not be as sharp as usual. His thoughts were interrupted by a loud boom that shook the building. He calmly noted that it was about time for a confrontation. His phone rang, displaying a message from his secretary, who was trying to calm him down. He answered the call, and she informed him that the number 1 hero had just burst through the lobby door, looking quite displeased. Izuku sighed, trying to control his temper as he contemplated the situation. He instructed that Izumi could come up, and he wanted pictures of the damage sent to him for future reference. The call ended, leaving him staring out the window, where he often found solace in the view of the city. His chair was positioned to face the window most of the time he spent there. The door swung open abruptly, stirring memories as he closed his eyes. His back remained turned to the entrance. Izumi entered with a fierce glare, surrounded by a green glow, and confronted him about his actions. She expressed her disappointment that the #1 hero lacked the decorum expected of him, especially after breaking down her lobby door and frightening her employees. Realizing her own intensity, the glow around her faded as she apologized. Izuku turned to face her, his expression serious. The sight of him left Izumi momentarily speechless, her eyes widening in disbelief. He held a deep resentment that no amount of meditation could erase. He coldly dismissed her apology, insisting she could pay for the door and apologize to his staff. He then demanded to know what she wanted. Izumi, breathless with shock, expressed her disbelief that he was alive, recalling how they had been led to believe he was dead during their final battle with All for One. Izuku, unimpressed, pointed out the foolishness of taking a known villain's word at face value. He had relished the time away from them, and Izumi's hurt was evident, though she struggled to respond. Curiosity overtook her as she inquired about his whereabouts during his absence. He explained that he had been traveling the world, gaining knowledge, and building his company while she had become a hero. He bitterly remarked on the difference between protection and neglect, asserting that he had never felt safe with them. Izumi's expression turned anguished, but she could not argue against his words. She acknowledged that she hadn't come to apologize, realizing he likely expected her to threaten him for the tower. As suspicion grew within her, she pressed him about the source of his newfound wealth. Izuku regarded her with disdain, asserting that he owed her no explanations and that she could find the answers herself. He made it clear that he intended to pursue legal action for the damage to his property, expressing his deep-seated animosity toward her and her family. He demanded she leave his building, warning her of the consequences of her actions. Izumi stood frozen for a moment before turning and exiting, leaving Izuku alone once more. He gripped his chair tightly, unaware that he had broken its wooden armrest in his fury. His anger simmered as he gazed out at the city, feeling the heat of his emotions. Meanwhile, a man sprinted through the alleyways, fear etched on his face as he fled from an unseen threat. Just as he turned a corner, he was abruptly knocked down by an outstretched arm. Before he could recover, a foot pressed down on his chest, pinning him to the ground. He looked up, terror-stricken, into the red eyes of Batman, who demanded to know where the children were being held. The villain, 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲, protested that revealing the information would cost him his life, but Batman's glare intensified as he applied more pressure. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐴 gasped for air, feeling the weight of Batman's resolve. The sound of machinery whirring filled the air, and 𝐒𝐮𝐴's fear escalated. As Batman continued to apply pressure, 𝐒𝐮𝐴 struggled, desperate to escape the situation. The tension in the air thickened, and 𝐒𝐮𝐴's cries echoed off the walls. Batman remained unyielding, his focus unwavering as he demanded answers. Finally, 𝐒𝐮𝐴 broke down, revealing the location of the children in a desperate plea for mercy. Batman, still unrelenting, prepared to escalate his methods. He dislocated 𝐒𝐮𝐴's arm with a swift motion before knocking him unconscious, leaving the alley just as the sound of police sirens approached. A dog jumped from the hole onto Batman's back, but Batman swiftly reached behind, grabbing it by its nape and tossing it against a wall. Another thug appeared, firing 3 shots at Batman from a handgun. Batman flexed his arm over his head, protecting it as the bullets struck his armor, bouncing harmlessly off. Izuku flicked his wrist with his left hand, forming a batarang that he tossed at the thug. The batarang lodged itself into the barrel of the gun just as the thug fired, causing the weapon to backfire and resulting in a painful injury to the thug's hand. The thug fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he clutched his injured hand. The sound of heavy thumps echoed in the thug's ears, forcing him to look up and see Izuku staring down at him. Izuku grabbed the thug's injured hand, eliciting a cry of pain as he squeezed. His voice, muffled by the mask, was filled with anger as he demanded to know where the others were. The thug, trembling, revealed that there was a fake wall that could be broken open. In a swift motion, Izuku backhanded the thug, knocking him out with a decisive blow. Izuku's helmet glowed blue as he scanned the wall, activating the kinetic energy stored in his arm. He punched the wall with force, unleashing a wave of energy that shattered it. As the dust settled, Izuku froze, his heart heavy with sorrow as he faced the grim sight before him. The room was filled with bodies, all far too young. Rage surged within him, but he felt powerless, realizing he was too late to save them. Meanwhile, in a dark cave in America, a family watched footage of the new Batman in Japan on a large computer screen. Most of the footage was amateur, but one clip stood out, captured by a drone. PP commented on the skill of this new Batman, noting his training, while Cassandra pointed out his reliance on technology and his aggressive nature. Jason observed the situation with a calm demeanor, as if reflecting on a strange mirror. Tim expressed his frustration over their lack of leads regarding this mystery Batman, who seemed to possess superior technology. The quietest member of the group, Damien, focused intently on the screen and asked if anyone had heard from their father. Oracle responded, explaining that he had been off the radar, only appearing in CEO meetings abroad, and had resigned from the league. Damien continued to watch the screen, contemplating the possibility that this new Batman might be a different successor chosen by their father. Izuku, in his bat suit, fought through a group of thugs with sheer brute force, showing little regard for his own safety. He took hits without dodging, driven by a growing anger that fueled his every move. With each crime he thwarted and each trafficking ring he dismantled, his rage intensified. Though he had only been Batman for 5 months, it felt like years had been estranged from his life. He was emotionally exhausted, yet one thing kept him going: his unwavering hatred. He despised himself for not being fast enough, strong enough, and for the existence of such filth in society. His hatred extended to the heroes who allowed these atrocities to happen, the corruption that plagued the world, and the painful memories of his past. Each encounter with crime only deepened his fury, and he found himself unable to hold back. As he faced another thug who swung wildly at him, Izuku countered with a powerful punch that shattered the thug's shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. Another thug rushed in, attempting to stab him, but the blade shattered on impact. Izuku retaliated with a fierce strike to the collarbone, incapacitating the attacker. When another thug ensnared him with tentacles, Izuku activated an electric field, shocking the assailant. With the remaining energy, he delivered a final blow to the last thug, leaving them defeated on the floor. Around 30 thugs lay scattered, all with injuries, while Izuku had taken hits from each of them without attempting to evade. He was consumed by anger, needing to unleash his fury. This was the third warehouse of thugs he had taken down in just an hour, yet his blood continued to boil. He intercepted a police call regarding a domestic abuse incident involving a child, and his anger surged once more as he raced to the scene. Izuku landed on the side of a high-rise apartment building, digging his claws into the glass as he began to scale up to the penthouse. He finally reached the correct window and went invisible, allowing him to see a man standing over the body of a woman. Without hesitation, Izuku jumped off the window and boosted himself through, shattering the glass and rolling with momentum onto the floor. The man turned at the noise, raising his arm to aim, but Izuku bounced up mid-roll, throwing a batarang that knocked the gun from his hand. Izuku propelled himself forward, grabbing the man by the throat and slamming him against the wall, causing it to shake from the force. He demanded to know what the man had done, his voice filled with fury. The man replied that the woman had tried to keep him away from his true love, insisting that there were no boundaries to stop their love. Izuku was about to strike the man when something on the floor caught his attention: a child's toy. He tossed the man onto the dining table and pinned him there with a batarang. As Izuku checked the woman's pulse, his detective vision confirmed her death. His blood boiled further when a picture of a little girl appeared next to the woman. He quickly scanned the apartment for her and detected a heartbeat in a nearby room. Rushing to the room, he found the girl lying on her bed, alive but unresponsive, her eyes blank and staring at the ceiling. Switching to UV vision, Izuku's body grew hot as he noticed numerous handprints around the room. Something snapped inside him as he left the traumatized child and returned to confront the man. With a quiet yet chilling calmness, Izuku asked what the man had done. Despite his tone, the hatred in his voice was palpable as he yanked the man off the table, holding him in the air. He didn't remove the batarang first, tearing a hole through the man's hand. The man explained that he had been expressing his love when the woman returned home and ruined the moment with her screams. Izuku slammed the man into the wall, cracking it further, and demanded to know why he had betrayed the trust of the woman he was supposed to protect. The man dismissed Izuku's anger, claiming that with time, the woman would come to understand his love. Izuku's veins bulged as he twisted the man's arm, breaking it with the enhanced strength of his suit. The man laughed, asserting that love transcended time and distance, and that even if separated, his love would always be with her. Enraged, Izuku grabbed the man with both hands and slammed him against the window, shattering the pane. The room opened to the city skyline as Izuku held the man over the ledge, the wind whipping around them. Izuku struggled to regain his composure, feeling as if he were on fire, his teeth grinding together as his heart raced with rage at the man's smug expression. The man taunted that even if Izuku killed him, the girl would never forget him, and that every boy who looked at her would remind her of him. Izuku's vision turned red as he snapped, but instead of tightening his grip, his fingers loosened. He looked down to find empty hands, the night sky stretching out before him. He heard screams below but couldn't bring himself to look. His knees felt weak, and he stumbled backward, leaning against the marble counter as he stared at his trembling hands. He had crossed a line. Izuku felt sick as he questioned what he had done. In the reflection of a remaining window, he saw not Batman, but a broken, angry man using an expensive suit to unleash his fury on the world. A failure. Later, Izuku arrived in the cave, walking through one of the many entrances. Still reeling from his actions, he approached the large computer in the center but froze, unable to move. His helmet alerted him that a failsafe was on standby. He struggled to move, but his suit had him completely trapped. He heard footsteps approaching, revealing Bruce with a furious expression and cane in hand. Bruce demanded to know what Izuku had done, his voice low but filled with disappointment. Izuku couldn't look away as Bruce commanded the helmet to release him. When it popped off, Bruce forced him to meet his gaze, demanding an explanation. Izuku stammered that he had done what he had to do. Bruce reacted with anger, striking Izuku across the face and questioning whether he believed taking the law into his own hands was justified. Izuku defended himself, insisting that the man deserved punishment for what he had done to the girl. Bruce countered that Izuku's personal feelings mattered more to him than the girl's need for closure, emphasizing that she would never see the man suffer for his actions. Izuku felt a mix of anger and frustration as he faced Bruce. How could Bruce not understand his turmoil? Bruce acknowledged Izuku's struggle, explaining that he understood the temptation to take matters into his own hands. He had faced that temptation countless times and knew how easy it would be to eliminate every threat he encountered. However, he emphasized that resorting to violence wouldn't make it right. Bruce's gaze was intense, filled with a deep emotion that Izuku couldn't decipher. He warned Izuku about the dangers of crossing that line, suggesting that if he justified killing one monster, he might eventually rationalize taking down anyone who committed a crime. Bruce reminded Izuku that killing strips away humanity, and if he continued down that path, he would lose what made him human. Izuku remained silent, absorbing Bruce's words. Bruce urged him to be better than the animals they fought against, to show the world that there was a better way. Izuku stood frozen, realizing that the suit he wore had been unlocked. Bruce placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder, expressing that he was barred from being Batman until he was ready. Izuku felt defeated, like a kicked puppy, as Bruce sighed and activated the suit's mechanism, causing it to return to its case in a swirl of particles. Bruce expressed his disappointment, admitting that while he had trained Izuku's body, he had failed to prepare his mind for the harsh realities of the world. He encouraged Izuku to take a break, to clear his mind and discover who was needed more in Japan, Batman or Izuku Midoriya. With that, Bruce left, entering an elevator and leaving Izuku alone in the cave. Izuku gazed at the Batman suit in its case, his reflection distorted in the glass. For the first time since he began his crusade, he questioned his purpose. The lights dimmed, leaving him in darkness. The morning sun struggled to shine through the mist as Izuku arrived at a cemetery in a sleek black suit, holding a bouquet. He took a deep breath before walking toward the gate, the word cemetery prominently displayed above. As he walked along the stony path, he passed numerous gravestones on his way to his destination. He had purchased a small plot of land in this cemetery for the Midoriya family, where he would eventually rest, and where Eira rested now. Climbing a hill, he reached an opening between trees and found a single stone monument, the Midoriya Haka, with only 2 names inscribed, his in red and Eira's faded. The stone was almost pristine, adorned with sakura petals. Izuku couldn't help but smile at the appealing sight, confirming Eira's special nature. He addressed Eira, apologizing for his absence. Silence enveloped him, prompting a deep breath as he knelt respectfully, ignoring the dew soaking his breathes. He confessed his struggles, expressing regret for not living up to his promise to be a hero in her stead. He recounted the anger that consumed him, leading to a moment where he crossed a line he never intended to. Suddenly, a soft voice filled his ears, sending chills down his spine. Eira appeared before him, bathed in golden light, slightly transparent and wearing the outfit she had on the day she passed. She smiled and patted Izuku's shoulder, telling him she missed him. Though he couldn't physically feel her embrace, he felt lighter as she hugged him, her presence comforting. Izuku was in disbelief, asking how she was there. Eira reassured him that she had never left his side, explaining that he had been too busy to notice her. She revealed that she had witnessed everything he had experienced and understood his anger. The pain he felt after taking a life showed that he still had humanity within him. Tears filled Izuku's eyes as he reunited with his sister after so many years. He felt neither anger nor emptiness. Instead, Eira's presence brought him peace. As she sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder, a golden aura surrounded him, transferring Eira's patience into him. With a newfound sense of clarity, Izuku walked down the streets with a lightness in his step. Despite his lack of sleep, he felt refreshed and oddly uplifted. People noticed him as he strolled along the sidewalk, a billionaire casually walking among them. Yet, doubts lingered in his mind. Eira believed in him, but he struggled to believe in himself. He wanted to help society, but he was uncertain whether to do so as Batman or Izuku Midoriya. This question, posed by Bruce, lingered in his mind, leaving him unsure of the right path. As Izuku contemplated this dilemma, he dedicated his time to assisting those in his community. Whether it was buying groceries or toys for children, he found joy in lending a hand. To him, it was about making a small difference in the world. While helping an elderly lady load her groceries into her car, an explosion suddenly shook the street. Izuku instinctively shielded the woman with his body before turning to assess the situation. Izumi and a villain had crashed into the middle of the street, sending debris flying and igniting a fire in a nearby apartment building. Izuku urged the old lady to seek safety and then sprinted towards the burning structure, determined to help those trapped inside. He dashed up the stairs of the building, ignoring the chaos around him. Upon reaching the upper floor, he found a door blocked by a fallen support beam, with desperate voices calling for help from behind it. Without hesitation, he used all his strength to lift the heavy obstruction and kicked the door down. Inside, he found a group of frightened individuals who shook their heads in response to his inquiry about others still inside. Just then, a woman with a baby in her arms cried out for her son, who had gone back to their apartment. Izuku assured her that he would find the boy and instructed her to get to safety. He wrapped her in his coat to protect the baby and rushed down the hall, the flames growing fiercer as the building trembled from the ongoing battle outside. He kicked open the door to the apartment, discovering the child unconscious on the floor, clutching a stuffed animal. Without wasting a moment, he tore off part of his shirt to cover the boy's mouth and lifted him into his arms. As he turned to escape, the entrance collapsed, blocking his way with burning debris. Izuku quickly scanned the room for another exit and spotted a window. He knew it would be risky, but he had no choice. Meanwhile, Izumi used her telekinesis to subdue the villain, pinning him to the ground with a green glow until he fell unconscious. She floated in the air, her dress billowing in the wind, feeling the strain of her powers as she noticed the raging fire in the apartment. Just then, a figure leaped from the 4th floor, crashing onto a car below. Izuku landed on the roof, the boy safely in his arms, and groaned as he sat up. The grateful mother rushed to him, thanking him profusely and offering to repay him. Izuku chuckled, assuring her that he needed no payment. Instead, he handed her a business card, promising to help with any expenses not covered by insurance. He encouraged everyone present to reach out to him for assistance. As paramedics approached, Izuku waved them off, wanting them to attend to the others first. From a distance, Izumi watched in disbelief as her brother, once so helpless, had just jumped from a window and emerged unscathed. A pang of jealousy struck her as she noticed the crowd gathering around Izuku, while she, the #1 hero, received no attention. Unable to resist, she walked toward him, but their conversation quickly turned into a playful argument over the phone. Izuku expressed his annoyance at her approach, while she insisted on checking on his well-being. Their bickering caught the attention of reporters, who eagerly recorded the exchange. One reporter jokingly asked if it was a lover's quarrel, prompting an immediate and humorous denial from both twins. The two began to bicker again, escalating to the point where the police had to step in and separate them to prevent further confrontation. Izumi was fuming as she paced back and forth by a police car, relieved that civilians were kept at bay by the police tape. As she continued her restless pacing, a few of her friends arrived, likely drawn by the commotion. Bakugo, Jiro, Shoto, and Momo approached her. Bakugo, usually brash, spoke softly, expressing concern for Izumi. She hesitated before responding, admitting her frustration. Momo, with her typical caring demeanor, inquired if it was about the person in the ambulance. Bakugo and Shoto exchanged glances, their expressions revealing shock. Jiro and Momo looked confused as Bakugo clarified the situation. The name that hung in the air was Izuku, her brother. In a different realm, a log entry detailed the struggles of Izuku Midoriya, the former Batman of Japan. The writer reflected on their failures in training him, realizing they had neglected to prepare him for the mental toll of his responsibilities. The writer felt a deep sense of regret, acknowledging that Izuku had crossed lines that should never have been crossed. The BLD on Izuku's hands was a shared burden, a testament to the mentor's failure. The suit had been taken from Izuku, and he was barred from being Batman until he could regain control over his emotions or decide that the mantle was not for him. The writer hoped for Izuku's recovery, feeling conflicted about wanting him to step away from a life that did not suit his kind nature. As the narrative shifted, Izuku took a deep breath as the elevator descended to the cave. It had been 2 weeks since he had been told to leave, and he felt a mix of readiness and nervousness about confronting his mentor. Just as self-doubt crept in, Era appeared beside him, encouraging him to calm down. Izuku smiled at her presence, though he couldn't help but wonder why her voice sounded older than her appearance. Era explained that she had no reference for what an older version of herself would look like, having never known her father and not resembling her mother. As the elevator doors opened, Era vanished in a golden light, and Izuku stepped out to find Bruce engrossed in videos of his recent activities as his wealthy persona. The changes he had made in the community were significant, transforming the housing market and alleviating the crisis in Japan. Despite his achievements, Izuku felt a nagging sense that he could have done more. He approached Bruce, who turned to face him, prompting a serious conversation about Izuku's future as Batman. Izuku met Bruce's gaze, unwavering as he expressed his longing to continue as Batman. Bruce challenged him, noting that in the past 2 weeks as Izuku Midoriya, he had accomplished more than he had as Batman. Izuku acknowledged this truth but insisted that during that time, he had acted out of anger rather than purpose. Bruce scrutinized Izuku, searching for insincerity but finding none. Izuku explained that while he had instilled fear in criminals, he had not saved anyone or made meaningful progress in his mission. Bruce presented clips of Izuku's potential as Batman, showcasing moments where he had saved lives, but also reminded him of the darkness that had clouded his heart, leading to grave mistakes. As Izuku contemplated Bruce's concerns, Era reappeared, offering her support by holding his hand. He reflected deeply on the question of whether Japan needed him as Izuku or as Batman. He recognized that he had made a greater impact as himself, but he also understood that this was a consequence of his own actions. It may sound selfish, But Izuku wanted to be both a hero and a symbol of hope. Growing up, he dreamed of being someone who could save everyone, a figure people could look to and know everything would be alright. He thought that dream had died, but when he became Batman and saw the gratitude in the eyes of those he saved, he realized that dream was still alive. Japan needed a symbol, not just of vengeance but also of hope. Bruce contemplated Izuku for a long moment before speaking in a calm tone. He decided to test Izuku's conviction. He would allow him to be Batman again, but first, Izuku had to pass one final test. Bruce would drop him off on the opposite side of Japan, and his goal was to make it back in 2 weeks without any access to his funds, vehicles, or gadgets, only his skills. A capsule emerged from the ground, revealing one of Bruce's older suits, a classic Batman outfit without the gadgets Izuku had grown accustomed to. It was a gray suit with blue trunks, a cape, and a cowl, featuring the iconic black bat symbol in a yellow circle. Izuku stared at the suit, placing a hand on it before looking to Bruce, questioning if he was sure about this choice. Bruce placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, affirming that it had to be this suit and urging Izuku to prove he was Batman. As Izuku looked at his reflection in the cowl, he felt a genuine smile form. He promised he would make Bruce proud. Lightning struck, illuminating Izuku as he surveyed the city. He was determined to reach Tokyo in 2 weeks, relying solely on his skills. Currently, he was in Nagasaki, preparing for the journey ahead. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air, and Izuku sprang into action, leaping between rooftops until he reached the edge of one. Below, he saw a woman being robbed by 3 hooded figures. Without hesitation, he jumped in, drop-kicking one thug in the face as he descended. Izuku quickly regained his footing and aimed a punch at another thug, who absorbed the blow and attempted to retaliate. Izuku deftly deflected the punch and delivered a kick to the thug's gut, stunning him. However, another thug seized the opportunity, grabbing Izuku by the cape and pulling him down. As the thug attempted to strike, Izuku caught his wrist and, using his legs, twisted the thug's arm, forcing him to release his grip. Izuku sprang back up, taking down the stunned thug with a swift hook. After the fight, Izuku took a moment to calm his breathing and steady his heart rate. He realized he had been relying too much on the suit. A fight like this would have been over in seconds with his advanced gear. He had nearly been defeated in this classic suit, and his thoughts turned to the woman he had saved, hoping she was all right. He knew he needed to improve his skills. Peering down the alley, Izuku noticed a pair of red eyes peeking at him from behind a dumpster, clearly frightened. He approached cautiously, asking if she was okay while trying to sound gruff, aware that his voice was on TV. The woman remained hidden, prompting Izuku to sigh internally. Just as he was about to leave, he spotted a guitar case on the ground. He picked it up and inspected it, hearing a soft curse from behind the dumpster, confirming its owner. Crouching down, he extended the case toward the girl. After a moment of silence, she stepped out, revealing herself to be a middle school girl in a white uniform. Her striking red eyes and long grayish-white hair caught Izuku's attention, especially the horn on her head. She appeared to be in her first year of middle school and seemed less afraid of him now as she gingerly took her guitar back. Izuku smiled, trying to appear friendly despite his intimidating appearance. He asked her why she was out alone at night. The girl hesitated before quietly explaining that she had been staying with a friend who canceled, and she was trying to reach the train. Izuku sensed she was not being entirely truthful but chose not to press the matter. He asked if she would be okay getting home, and she nodded, prompting him to smile again as he turned to leave. Curiously, she asked who he was, noting she had never seen him on the registry before. He turned back to her and simply stated that he was Batman. A month later, Bruce sat in the Batcave, sipping coffee while reading a newspaper. It had been a month since he sent Izuku on his trial. He had seen a few reports about Izuku in the news, mostly minor incidents, indicating he was maintaining a low profile. Yet, Bruce couldn't shake his worry. It was not unusual for members to take longer during their trials, but this felt prolonged. As Bruce contemplated his next move, a chime echoed through the cave, signaling the elevator's arrival. He turned to face the elevator just as it opened, revealing Izuku standing there. He looked disheveled, his costume torn in several places and stained from his adventures. Yet, Izuku stood tall as he approached Bruce, who met him halfway. Bruce offered a rare smile in response, welcoming him back. After a shower and some food, Izuku returned to the cave where Bruce stood next to the Beyond suit. He walked up and gazed at the suit, his suit. The past month had revealed his struggle with relying solely on the suit's capabilities, but it also highlighted his need for them. He needed to find a balance. Izuku pressed the side of the capsule, causing it to open. The suit quickly morphed onto him, making him feel complete once again. Bruce asked if he was ready to go out again, prompting Izuku to stare at the mirror. The bright red bat symbol reflected back at him. He expressed his longing to try something different, stating that red should instill fear in criminals, not in the people he aimed to protect. He needed to show them something hopeful. Izuku began to change the color on his chest and eyes to something that inspired him. Bruce acknowledged the good choice as the mirror reflected a large golden bat symbol that replaced the original glowing red one. With his eyes now golden, Izuku flexed, switching back to red and then relaxing to return to gold. He declared himself ready. Thus, the Golden Knight emerged. The Batman of Japan, the Batman who would go beyond, the Bat who regained his patience, the Knight who was granted temperance had returned. A plane gently landed on the outskirts of Tokyo, its sleek black design disappearing as it became invisible. Inside the jet was the entire Bat family, minus the extended members. Present were Batman Damian Wayne, Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin, Batgirl, Oracle, Batwoman, Signal, Spoiler, and Catwoman, who was there for a different reason. Damian turned to his family, who awaited his explanation for their trip to Japan. His hard glare was not unusual, but they could all sense his heightened fury. He informed them that they were there to find a fraudulent bat who had been masquerading as the symbol. They would monitor him closely for one purpose: to determine if their father had trained him and to uncover his whereabouts. A news report broke out on a TV screen before transitioning to Good Morning Japan. The two hosts, Yoruichi Kaza and 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐸𝐵 Toto, greeted the audience with smiles. They discussed the upcoming one-year anniversary of Izuku Midoriya, the prodigal son of Japan. Kaza highlighted how Midoriya had made significant waves in society by purchasing Might Tower, now renamed Hope Tower. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐸𝐵 noted that Midoriya had made a list of promises for the future of Japan, many of which seemed impossible. However, as of that day, approximately 92% of those promises had been fulfilled. This included rehabilitation centers for addictions, outreach campaigns for at-risk youth, and initiatives to assist children who were victims, along with his acquisition of homes to help citizens with their mortgages. Despite his efforts in various fields, there was one area where Midoriya had not made any attempts: hero-related matters. This was particularly notable given the presence of the number one hero, Deku, who had confronted Midoriya upon her return to Japan, resulting in a restraining order against her. The situation worsened when she attempted to confront him again after he had saved a young boy and several others during a chaotic encounter with a villain. Toto expressed his disbelief at Deku's actions, questioning her status as a hero. Kaza, trying to remain neutral, noted that it seemed uncharacteristic for a hero to return from a mission with the Justice League only to harass someone making a positive impact in the country. The discussion shifted to the emergence of a new vigilante in Japan, resembling a bat with a golden symbol on its chest. The footage, taken from a police body cam, suggested that this new figure was operating independently, raising questions about his intentions. The program then displayed the logo of Midoriya Industries, indicating a commercial break. The screen suddenly glowed green as it was crushed, revealing an annoyed Izumi sitting on the couch with the Bakugo twins, Todoroki and Momo. They couldn't blame her for her reaction, as the hero's popularity had been declining, especially in light of Izuku's significant contributions to Japan. Momo remarked on Midoriya's strategy, noting how he was diminishing support for the heroes by addressing issues they had failed to resolve, effectively buying out the competition. She observed that he owned a substantial portion of Japan, and the numbers were continuing to grow. It became clear why they needed to keep a close eye on him and his expenditures. To the public, it seemed as if a savior had arrived, but behind the scenes, a tyrant was eliminating successors. The air was thick with corruption. Izumi pondered whether he might be working for a remnant of the League of Villains. Momo, still the only one speaking, expressed her confusion about the gathering. The other 3 classmates looked away, guilt evident on their faces. Izumi finally turned to Momo, her expression heavy with remorse, and resolved to share the truth about her brother and herself. She felt it was crucial for her friends to understand who their companion had been and the choices she had made. They needed to know the reasons behind her actions and to keep a watchful eye on her brother, as she feared she had inadvertently created something that could threaten their society. As Izumi prepared to confess her past to her closest allies, the door opened, revealing her old classmates entering, all wearing puzzled expressions. Taking a deep breath, Izumi steeled herself to reveal her secrets. No longer would she hide behind her past. It was time to confront the future she had shaped through her actions. Meanwhile, a car sped through the night streets of Tokyo, weaving through traffic, driven by a very intoxicated teenager who struggled to control the vehicle with one hand. Further down the street, a family walked hand in hand, a father, a mother, and their daughter. The little girl played with a bouncy ball, bouncing it a bit too hard, causing it to roll into the crosswalk. She paused, glancing at the red hand signal, and bounced in place, waiting for the signal to change. When it turned to the walking man, she dashed out to retrieve her ball. At that moment, bright headlights swerved toward her. Before the car could reach the girl, a dark figure swooped in, wrapping her in a protective embrace. A cape materialized around them, shielding her from harm. The figure extended a hand, catching the car by the hood, causing it to crumple under the force. Time seemed to slow as the car screeched in protest, the figure's feet digging into the pavement, cracking the concrete beneath them. Despite being pushed back, the figure maintained their grip on the vehicle. With a determined push, the figure forced the hood to cave in completely, bringing the car to a halt. The orange energy surrounding them faded as they stood tall, releasing the girl, who gazed up in awe at the golden bat symbol emblazoned on their chest. Batman had made his presence known in downtown Tokyo, prompting onlookers to stop and capture the moment on their devices. Yet, Batman remained focused on the little girl, kneeling to offer her the bouncy ball. His voice was surprisingly gentle, despite the metallic undertones. The girl nodded, taking the ball and hugging it tightly. With a smile hidden behind his mask, Batman activated his grappling hook and soared away before any authorities could intervene, using rocket boosters on his boots to propel himself higher into the sky. However, Batman felt a sense of unease, as if he were being watched during the entire encounter. This feeling had lingered for some time, but each time he scanned his surroundings, both physically and technologically, he found nothing. Maintaining his vigilance, he used his grappling hook for another boost. As he glided, he spotted a van parked in a back alley and landed on a rooftop to observe it. 5 men in tactical gear exited the van, preparing for what appeared to be a raid. Batman consulted a city map, noting the unmarked basement beneath a nearby laundromat. As the thugs prepared to breach, Batman decided to intervene. He glided down and drop-kicked the closest thug, catching the others off guard. Before they could react, he threw 4 batarangs, which embedded into their shoulders, incapacitating them with a jolt of electricity. Stepping over the fallen thugs, Batman approached the concealed wall, feeling its surface. To the naked eye, it appeared to be a standard brick wall, but his X-ray vision revealed a hidden room behind it. He drew back his fist, a red hue forming around it as he punched through the wall, sending debris flying. Stepping into the darkness of the back room, Batman switched to night vision. The air was thick with the scent of chemicals, and his analysis indicated a mix of dangerous substances, including potential drugs. He discovered pallets stacked high with bricks of illicit materials. Examining one, he found it contained an unknown product. As he poked it, a small needle emerged from his fingertip, collecting a sample for analysis while he called the police. It was time to uncover the truth behind this substance. Just as Batman prepared to leave, he threw a batarang into a corner of the room. His eyes and bat symbol glowed red as he scanned the area, but found nothing amiss. Reluctantly, he exited, his symbol and eyes returning to their usual gold. Victor was a straightforward man, dedicated to his work and always getting the job done. He had never failed in his duties, but the last thing he remembered was a sharp pain in the back of his head as preparations were made to breach the lab. As he regained consciousness, he found himself hanging upside down, panic setting in as he realized his precarious situation. Victor dangled precariously over the edge, held only by a metal hand gripping his ankle. He glanced back to see a red bat emblem glowing on the chest of his captor, whose piercing red eyes bore down on him. The figure spoke, revealing a calm demeanor despite the tense situation. The grip tightened slightly, and Victor felt the weight of the moment. Batman lifted Victor until they were eye to eye, showcasing the stark difference in their sizes and strengths. The intensity of Batman's gaze seemed to penetrate Victor's very being. The vigilante demanded to know what Victor intended to do with the lab and who he worked for, emphasizing the urgency of his request. Victor's fear escalated as he stammered, expressing his fear of retribution from his employer. Batman's grip remained firm, and Victor's anxiety grew as he noticed the hand holding him was beginning to loosen. With a sudden jerk, he looked up just in time to see Batman untying his shoe with deliberate slowness. Panic surged through Victor as he realized the implications of that action. In a rush of desperation, Victor revealed the name of the substance, Hyper-Trig, a dangerous enhancement of trigger. He explained that he had been ordered to destroy the lab and secure any means of replicating it. Batman's grip tightened further, and Victor winced as he continued to divulge information about the villain responsible for the chaos, linking the substance to a recent incident. After a moment of contemplation, Batman promised to lower Victor once the information was confirmed. But in a swift motion he released his hold, and Victor plummeted briefly before an invisible wire caught him, slamming him against the wall and rendering him unconscious. Batman turned away, activating a holographic display that detailed the compound and the breakdown of Hyper-Trig. He noticed a shadow lurking on another rooftop, observing him. He needed to discuss these shadows with Bruce. Their presence was becoming a concern. With a grappling hook, Batman launched himself into the night, leaving the shadows to retreat to their temporary base. Back at the Batplane, the Bat family gathered around a holographic table, reviewing the data they had compiled on this new figure. Images and videos depicted various moments of his activities, showcasing his skills. Nightwing expressed admiration for the newcomer, while spoilers suggested the possibility of a female identity, though her comment went largely ignored. Damian speculated about the connection to Bruce, though his tone suggested skepticism. Cass noted that the new figure seemed inexperienced, aware of their presence but unable to locate them. Oracle analyzed the advanced suit worn by the mysterious figure, revealing its unique capabilities. The suit absorbed kinetic energy and utilized it in various ways, with different colors indicating different abilities. The family realized they were up against a formidable opponent, prompting Duke to voice his concerns about the confrontation ahead. Tim reassured everyone, emphasizing their teamwork and the element of surprise. Suddenly, the Batarang on the table activated, scanning the room and delivering a message. The voice warned them to cease their pursuit, claiming to mean no harm and urging them to return to Gotham to avoid conflict. The Batarang disintegrated, leaving the Bat family in stunned silence. In the Batcave, Izuku sat in front of the computer, his cowl removed but the rest of his suit still on. Bruce stood beside him, leaning on his cane. Izuku asked if the warning would deter the Bat family, to which Bruce replied that it likely wouldn't, suggesting that it might even provoke them further. Izuku leaned back in his chair, contemplating Bruce's advice to prepare for the upcoming battle, reassuring him that he wouldn't be alone. Bruce smirked, hinting that the original would be his co-pilot in this endeavor. Izuku gazed out over the city of Gifu from the construction site of the Tower of the Future, surrounded by unfinished walls and materials, but his focus remained on the city that lay before him, a city that was changing rapidly. Currently, Gifu remained partially destroyed due to Gigantomachnia's path of devastation, with only 5% of the reconstruction completed. Izuku had decided to take his boldest step yet as a billionaire, aiming to help Japan. He had purchased the entire city, taking full responsibility for its rebuilding and innovation, which significantly boosted his public support. However, this monumental decision had also drawn considerable backlash. May entered, dressed in a familiar outfit of a tank top and mechanic breathes, and remarked on Izuku's unexpected move. She expressed surprise that he was taking on such a massive project, especially since the plan was to transform it into a technological wonderland, a city that would elevate engineering to new heights. She jokingly noted that she was surprised he hadn't kissed her yet, prompting a laugh from them both as they gazed at the city with hopeful expressions. Mei tapped her ear twice, signaling Izuku to activate their private communication. He tapped his pen, producing a sound that indicated they could now converse privately. Mei questioned whether his nighttime activities were truly beneficial for Japan. Izuku hesitated before admitting that he wasn't entirely sure, but he acknowledged the impact he had made. He felt a strong need to improve and believed he could use his time to help as many people as possible. Mei looked at him, sensing something deeper within her friend, and asked when he had last slept. Izuku hesitated again, causing her concern until he offered her a reassuring smile, stating he had slept the previous night and that he was doing better than before. He promised he wouldn't rest until he had healed his country and saved everyone. Mei believed every word he said, convinced that if anyone could fix the country, it was him. She informed him that the Hero Association had been requesting a meeting, expressing their fear of him and his capabilities. They were trying to determine his stance in the ongoing situation, and she suggested he should talk to them to avoid creating more enemies among the heroes. Izuku sighed and closed his eyes, contemplating her words. He expressed his reluctance to see any of them again, and Mei offered her support by putting an arm around his waist. To an outside observer, this might have seemed like a romantic moment, but for them, it was a deep friendship forged over 5 years since they met in an accelerated engineering program. Their connection had sparked the idea for Midoriya Industries, although Izuku had wanted it to be Midoriya Hatsum Industries. Mei had declined, preferring to stay out of the public eye, despite her earlier longing for fame and sponsorships. However, after meeting Izuku and hearing his vision for a better Japan, she felt a sense of hope grow within her and decided to support him unconditionally. They had briefly explored a romantic connection, but it hadn't worked out, leading them to choose a familial bond instead. Mei remembered the broken man Izuku had been after a difficult medical residency, how he had disappeared for a time only to return with a fiercer determination. His vigilante work and efforts to run Midoriya Industries worried her, but she sensed a change in him a few months ago. The anger that had once consumed him had faded, and the Izuku she knew was returning, filled with hope. She couldn't have been happier. As they stood side by side, looking out at the city, the first snowfall began to drift down from the sky in delicate white flakes. Meanwhile, Batman surveyed his city under a cloudy night sky, snowflakes falling around him. A blanket of snow covered the rooftops, crunching beneath his feet as he stood on the ledge. He sensed the presence of the entire Bat family behind him, forming a semicircle, each wearing a serious expression. Damian stepped forward, asserting that they didn't need to be there and suggesting that he return to Gotham while Batman continued his work. He expressed his disdain for Izuku wearing the Batman symbol, claiming it was an affront to his birthright. Izuku, aware of the tension, calmly addressed the family, mentioning Bruce's name, which caused them to freeze in surprise. He explained that Bruce was aware of his presence in the suit, as he had given it to him. The question of who had a better claim to the role arose, a child born to it or someone chosen for it. This provoked Damian's anger, and he charged at Izuku. Despite the fury behind Damian's strikes, Izuku remained focused, knowing that while Damian's attacks were fueled by rage, they were still precise. Izuku managed to block Damian's strike but found himself on the defensive. He recognized that keeping Damian angry would lead to openings in his guard, and he seized the opportunity to land a solid hit, causing Damian to stagger. The rest of the family quickly moved in to assist Damian, with Cassandra launching a kick at Izuku, who barely dodged it. He attempted to grab her ankle, but Tim intervened, knocking his hand away. Izuku understood that they were cautious of his suit, likely having studied its kinetic effects, and they were playing it safe, turning the encounter into a battle of endurance. He couldn't help but smile as he formed 3 batarangs and threw them at Duke, but PP stepped in front, deflecting them with his eskrima sticks. Distracted, Izuku found himself under fire as Jason unleashed a barrage of bullets. The small caliber rounds had no chance of penetrating his armor, but they were an annoyance. A red glow began to build between the plates of his suit as he prepared to unleash a wave of energy. Suddenly, the entire family leaped away, each member landing on a different rooftop. Confusion washed over Izuku until he realized the reason, confirmed by Bruce's voice in his ear. They had studied the suit's kinetic boosts, and activating the stealth version would be futile. Oracle was likely monitoring his energy output to alert the others when he would release it. With that in mind, Izuku decided to go dark. The red glow faded, leaving the family on high alert for what might come next. To their surprise, Izuku pulled out a grapple gun and launched himself away, using the boosters in his boots to assist his escape. He allowed the family to chase him, not moving too quickly. They soon caught up as he landed on a solitary rooftop near the edge of the city. As the family landed around him, Izuku's armor began to glow a deep purple. PP, with a nervous expression, asked Oracle what the purple glow meant. Oracle's response was quick. They had never encountered that color before. As she began to analyze the levels, she warned PP not to let it hit him. Izuku then clapped his hands together, releasing a burst of purple energy that surged outwards. Instead of causing harm, it fried the communication systems in their suits, overriding their usual protections. An EMP had erupted from Izuku. With a confident grin, Izuku declared that they could now truly begin, with no more running or hiding. His suit transformed back to a golden bat as he flexed his muscles. He taunted the family, asking if they wanted to face him one at a time or all at once. His cocky demeanor irked them, but they recognized it was merely a tactic to provoke them. Jason discarded his helmet, revealing his face beneath the domino mask, while the others removed some gear to lighten their load. Izuku continued to smile beneath his mask as he assumed a fighting stance. Before the battle commenced, Izuku spoke, capturing their attention. He relayed Bruce's regards. Immediately, Stephanie lunged at him with a diving kick, but Izuku caught her leg and tossed her towards Cass, who barely managed to catch her. However, he couldn't capitalize on the moment as Damien charged at him, with Cass and Jason positioned on the perimeter, ready to assist if necessary. Damien landed a solid hit across Izuku's face, but the impact caused more harm to himself due to his helmet. Izuku prepared to counter with a powerful punch, but a grappling line wrapped around his wrist, revealing Cass and Tim struggling to pull him towards them. Izuku kicked Damien away with a front kick and yanked his arm to the side, taking both Cass and Tim off their feet. Just as he was about to act, PP struck the back of Izuku's head with both of his sticks, sending ripples of gold across the armor. Izuku glanced back and retaliated with a backward kick, which PP barely managed to block in time. He completed the movement by slamming Cass and Tim into the rooftop, cracking the surface beneath them. Before he could catch his breath, Jason and Duke attempted to tackle him in a double-team effort. Yet, Izuku stood firm, grabbing both of them and tossing them aside effortlessly. As he allowed the family to regroup, he stood across from them, watching as they helped each other up. He expressed his regret, stating that orders required him to end this, but they would meet again soon. Without warning, the plates of Izuku's armor began to glow blue, followed by a slow transition to yellow. In an instant, he vanished, leaving the family members incapacitated on the ground, electricity coursing through them. The energy dissipated as Izuku stood over them, his armor emitting a slight hiss. He looked down at them before turning to the only member who had not engaged in the fight. Izuku asked Selena, who sat on the ledge of the building, why she hadn't helped. She replied that she didn't care what symbol he wore, as long as he could take her to Bruce, he could call himself whatever he wanted. Izuku considered her words for a moment before tossing her a small button, instructing her to contact Oracle, which would lead her to the cave. With that, he shimmered and turned invisible, disappearing from sight. Meanwhile, Bruce sat in front of the back computer, analyzing Izuku's fight alongside him to identify areas for improvement. Izuku remained in full costume, even wearing his helmet, as they turned to the waterfall, the sound of jet engines filling the cave. The Batplane flew in and landed on the platform. Izuku muttered his admiration for the aircraft, but Bruce ignored him as the door opened, revealing the family emerging slowly. They looked stunned to see Bruce seated at the computer with Izuku standing beside him, clearly indicating that Izuku had been chosen as a candidate for Batman. The one who felt the most slighted was Damien, who stepped forward with a scowl, stopping in front of Bruce. He accused Bruce of choosing a fraud, someone trained to take his birthright. Though Damien's voice was filled with anger, Izuku could sense the pain and betrayal beneath it. He felt a pang of sympathy, wanting to step back and let the family drama unfold, but he was now a part of it, whether he realized it or not. Bruce addressed the family, explaining that he had indeed chosen Izuku not to be Batman, but to be a ward like the rest of them had been at one point. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Izuku had taken on the mantle, undergoing the same trials and training as the others, proving himself worthy of the symbol on his chest. Bruce let his words sink in, watching as Damien seethed with anger. Surprisingly, it was PP who stepped forward first, offering his hand to Izuku. PP looked up to meet Izuku's eyes as he offered his hand for a shake. He introduced himself, expressing that if Bruce spoke highly of Izuku, he had no reason to argue. He apologized for their earlier desperation in searching for Bruce and welcomed Izuku to the family. Izuku smiled beneath his mask as he accepted the handshake, acknowledging the weight of the mantle he was taking on and promising to keep his own side of things. However, Jason was skeptical and voiced his concerns, insisting that they didn't even know who Izuku was. PP quickly countered that it didn't matter, as Bruce wouldn't choose just anyone to wear that symbol, especially given its significance. He expressed his support for Izuku, despite disagreeing with Bruce's decision to pit two candidates against each other, likening it to a competition. Bruce sighed, understanding his son's perspective but clarifying his intentions. He explained that he didn't want them to fight for the mantle. The world needed a Batman, but that didn't mean there could only be one. Japan needed a Batman, just as Gotham already had its own in Damien. He had come to see what he could do for Japan, believing a Batman was necessary due to the declining society. He then invited Izuku to reveal himself. If Bruce trusted them, Izuku would too. As his helmet retracted, revealing his face, most of the family remained composed, except for PP, Tim, and Damien, who recognized him. Bruce shared that the original plan was for him to use the suit to restart his journey as Batman, but meeting Izuku changed that. He had initially sought educational resources to help save Japan, and as some of them knew, Izuku had excelled in that regard. Jason, who hadn't followed Japan's politics closely, asked for clarification. Tim explained that Izuku was the founder and CEO of Midoriya Industries, the fifth largest company in the world, projected to become second soon, and the third richest man globally, following Bruce and Luthor. Jason expressed his annoyance, implying that Izuku had received significant financial backing from Bruce. Tim clarified that Bruce had only given Izuku a small amount, and the rest was his own achievement. Bruce continued his story, detailing how he had tried to push Izuku away from the life of a hero, but that only drew him closer. Eventually, Izuku earned the symbol on his chest, becoming the Batman of Japan alongside Damien, the Batman of Gotham. Damien took a moment before muttering that he could have handled it. Bruce quickly responded that this wasn't Damien's fight. Gotham needed him, and Japan needed Izuku. Damien stared at Bruce for a moment before turning and walking toward the plane. Others began to follow, but some family members remained behind. Damien, Jason, Tim, Stephanie, and Catherine boarded the plane, while PP, Duke, Barbara, and Cassandra stayed as it took off, leaving half the family behind. Izuku felt a wave of sadness wash over him. He had just found a family, and now it felt like it was beginning to fracture. A woman adjusted her hair and applied the final touches to her makeup while holding a microphone. As a cameraman prepared, she smiled and picked up the mic, ready for the countdown. When the cameraman signaled 0, she began her report, stating that she was outside the headquarters of the Hero Association. Rumors suggested that Izuku was coming for a meeting with the top 10 and the council, though the reasons remained uncertain. The Hero Association and Safety Commission were concerned about Izuku's recent actions and purchases, including his refusal to cooperate with any heroes. She noted that his purchase of the city of Gifu had made many nervous, viewing it as an overreach of power from the billionaire, despite his claims of a significant project for the city. As she concluded her segment, a limo arrived at the entrance, prompting her to rush over with the camera, joined by other press and paparazzi. The door opened, and Izuku stepped out, triggering a flurry of camera flashes and questions, which he ignored as Mei followed him. They began walking toward the entrance, while several heroes emerged from the building to push back the press. As the camera zoomed out, a reticle aimed at the back of Izuku's head. The sniper's finger hovered over the trigger, ready to take the shot. Elsewhere, Golden watched the news coverage with a glass of wine in hand and instructed the sniper to proceed. The sniper took a deep breath and pulled the trigger, the sound echoing through the air. Izuku reacted instantly, pushing Mei in front of him to shield her. He didn't notice as the bullet made contact, a golden light absorbing the impact and causing sparks to fly until the shield shattered. The bullet fell harmlessly to the ground. Before a second shot could be fired, a green wall formed around them, and they were quickly pulled inside by a hero. Izuku struggled to keep his eyes open, feeling an overwhelming exhaustion wash over him. He leaned against a wall for support, trying to catch his breath. His ears were ringing, but he could feel Mei at his side as he fought the urge to sleep. Era appeared in front of him, her form slightly less golden than before. She looked a bit tired like him. She explained that they had discovered what the second virtue did. A protective shield would form around him if he was about to die, but it seemed to drain him even through the virtue of temperance, and it affected her as well. Izuku regained his composure and stood taller as his virtue activated again, dispelling his exhaustion. A green glow surrounded him, and he felt a deep trauma begin to resurface. He glanced up to see Izumi staring down at him, panic etched on her face. Izumi demanded to know where he had gotten that quirk, holding him down with her own abilities. Before he could respond, Mei stood up and aimed her tablet at Izumi, which transformed into what resembled a plasma rifle. She insisted that Izumi let him go. Izumi looked shocked that one of her friends would threaten her with a weapon. Although they hadn't spoken in years, this felt extreme. Mei declared that Izuku shouldn't have to worry about Izumi anymore, stating that she had done enough. Izumi was taken aback but didn't have time to respond as a large green construct of a gun pointed at her face, with more surrounding her head. To her left, she noticed a glowing green ring on a fist, and she looked into the eyes of Tensei. He urged 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐸𝐵 to stand down, reminding her that Izuku was a guest of the Hero Association and that attacking him would harm their image. Tensei pointed out that it would look bad if the #1 hero attacked a guest right after an attempted assassination. Izumi insisted that she had shared their past and that Izuku didn't have a quirk, demanding an explanation for how he could have one now. Tensei didn't respond as his mask formed over his face and his uniform morphed onto him. He warned Izumi to back away from Izuku, giving her a final warning. The two stared each other down as Mei's gun began to charge up, glowing green. Meanwhile, Izuku discreetly reached for his watch and clicked a button, causing a tiny drone to separate and start recording. He pressed a second button, and a sound only Izumi could hear emitted from his watch, causing her to scream in pain as she clutched her ears. The control of her quirk faltered, and she collapsed to her knees. Izuku stood tall over the fallen hero, declaring that he had been willing to consider an alliance with the heroes, but that was now off the table after her actions. He explained that the Golden Shield was technology his company had been developing, something anyone could wear for a second chance at life. He accused her of attacking him out of fear that he was finally equal to her. Izuku revealed that he had studied her quirk for years and knew how to counter it. He explained that her quirk was derived from a small extra organ in her brain, and he could target that organ, causing her extreme pain and making her quirk fail. Izumi looked up at him with tears in her eyes, but he gazed down with indifference. He stated that he was no longer the scared kid she once knew and that Midoriya Industries had no interest in the hero business of Japan. He turned and began to walk away, with Mei quickly following him, though she glanced back at Tensei before fully turning to catch up with Izuku, leaving Izumi on the ground in regret. Later, in the Batcave, Izuku sat in front of the computer, staring at the screen until he decided to do what he should have done years ago. He commanded the computer to create a drive with encryption and name it Babel Protocol. That night he looked down at his city once more. Gifu was progressing well in its rebuilding, but a new problem had emerged. Crime was rising, seeking to establish itself before the city was finished. It was time to take action and reclaim his city. His golden bat glowed in the dark as he contemplated the situation, still haunted by his recent near-death experience and the encounter with Izumi. The news had been replaying the incident constantly, and the Hero Association was facing significant backlash. It was time to get to work, and he needed to be at his best, especially since he wouldn't be going alone. Someone approached him on the rooftop, wearing a black hero suit adorned with a bluebird-like symbol. Nightwing greeted Izuku with a cheerful smile and asked if he was ready. Izuku smiled beneath his mask and pulled out his grapple gun, confirming that he was ready. The two grappled away, beginning their patrol together. As they jumped between buildings, Batman finally asked what had prompted him to want to patrol together. He acknowledged that Bruce had chosen Nightwing, which was enough for him to accept the symbol on his suit, but he wanted to see how well Nightwing had progressed and understand why Bruce had chosen him. Batman couldn't help but smile as they landed on a roof and sprinted to the other side. They leaped down into an alley, interrupting a drag trade. Nightwing expected to have to carry some weight as they faced a crowd of 20 thugs. After easily defeating 5 of them, he turned to assist Batman, only to find him inspecting a brick of drags next to a truck, surrounded by the defeated thugs. Nightwing whistled in admiration as he approached Batman's side, impressed by his efficiency. Batman, however, remained focused, testing the package and downplaying the situation, explaining that his suit significantly enhanced his strength and speed. It was expected for Batman to defeat them quickly. While some might interpret that as arrogance, Nightwing recognized it as honesty, which brought a smile to his face. However, that smile faded when he finally examined the brick Batman had shown him. He had never seen that drag before. Batman explained that it was called hypertrigger, a substance that could significantly enhance a person's quirk or meta ability. For instance, someone who could only produce fire like a lighter could unleash flames comparable to a flamethrower after using trigger. Nightwing glanced at the truck Batman was inspecting, discovering dozens of hyper-triggers, or at least the unfinished product. Batman continued, warning that hyper-trigger could amplify abilities to dangerous levels. A common criminal had been given an incomplete version and had managed to challenge Japan's #1 hero, despite having a quirk that only slightly strengthened his bones. Nightwing frowned at the implications. If this drag were completed or given to a stronger individual, the consequences could be dire. As Batman pulled out a grapple gun and soared into the night, Nightwing followed closely behind. Their patrol had been relatively uneventful, aside from the usual minor crimes they thwarted together. They took a moment to admire the city lights, reflecting on their pasts. Nightwing shared stories of his time in the circus and how Bruce had taken him in. Izuku recounted his childhood, the loss of Era, and how he had learned to control his rage, striving to be a better version of Batman. Nightwing observed Batman, who gazed down at the city, the night lights shimmering off his black armor while his golden eyes shone brightly. In that moment, Nightwing felt the deep love Batman had for his city and country, reassuring him that Japan would be in good hands for the future. Their moment of peace was shattered by an explosion in the distance. Without a word, they rushed to the scene, encountering 2 villains wreaking havoc with fire powers, destroying worker bots that were repairing a section of the city. Their actions had caused several cars to crash, igniting a fire in a nearby building. Batman acted swiftly, tossing 2 canisters that ensnared the pyromaniacs in a sticky polymer. As they struggled to escape, Batman dashed toward the burning building. He noticed a car trapped against a pole, electric wires preventing anyone from approaching. He threw 2 more canisters that froze the wires, stopping the current, before continuing toward the flames. Nightwing called out, but Batman was already charging through the front door of the apartment complex. Activating his X-ray vision, he located each person inside and assessed their conditions. Switching to thermal vision, he identified the hottest spots in the building. His suit absorbed the thermal energy, glowing yellow as he prepared for a burst of speed. In an instant he was gone. Within seconds, Batman rescued each resident, bringing them outside simultaneously. He dropped canisters on the hot spots, cooling the building significantly, though the fire still raged. As he brought nearly all the residents to safety, he noticed one was still inside. Without hesitation, he sprinted back into the building, ignoring the steam rising from his suit due to overexertion. The structure began to collapse, debris falling around him, but he pressed on, leaping over cracks in the stairs until he reached the second floor. There, he found a small child hiding under a bed. Quickly, he moved the bed aside and placed a breathalyzer over the child's mouth while lifting them up. His suit released a cool vapor to protect the child from overheating as he navigated through the flames. Outside, Nightwing attended to the civilians they had rescued. One unconscious person began to scream for their child, attempting to reach the burning building but collapsing from exhaustion. Just then, Batman emerged from the fire, his cape billowing behind him as he descended the steps, the building collapsing inwards behind him. The mother gazed up at her savior in disbelief as Batman knelt and handed her the child, who she embraced tightly. Watching from a distance, Nightwing reflected on something Bruce had said long ago: Batman needed to be more like Nightwing. A smile spread across his face. A TV flickered to life, displaying breaking news. A serious-looking reporter appeared on screen, his pink crew cut and lime green skin making him stand out. He introduced himself as Doma Hakuji from Japan National News. He reported on an assassination attempt against Izuku Midoriya, the billionaire and CEO of Midoriya Industries, which had occurred 3 days prior. Fortunately, Midoriya had been equipped with new technology that deflected the bullet, and the assassin was apprehended while attempting to flee the country. As the reporters spoke, images of Izuku and the incident flashed across the screen, followed by a shot of Izumi and the Hero Association logo. With the reporter's frown deepening, he continued to explain the ongoing controversy. The assassin was linked to the notorious mob boss, Golden. When Midoriya was brought into the building for protection, he was unexpectedly attacked by 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐬𝐴, the #1 hero, as soon as he entered. The infamous video of the incident quickly circulated online, showing 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 pinning Midoriya to the ground with her quirk. Although she eventually released him, the video spread rapidly, dividing public opinion in Japan. The reporter displayed a poll on the screen, showcasing a pie chart that fluctuated between gold, representing Izuku, and green, representing Izumi, hovering around the 50% mark. Some supported 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 simply because of her past heroics during the League of Villains crisis, believing she must have had a valid reason for her actions against Midoriya. Others defended Midoriya, arguing that he was contributing significantly more to society than the heroes had recently. The reporter noted that this situation was detrimental to Japan's morale. He elaborated on the rumors surrounding the Yakuza's involvement with either party, mentioning that the assassin had connections to organized crime. While the identity of the assassin remained a mystery, speculation continued to grow due to the recent actions of both Midoriya and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴. Midoriya had made headlines with his controversial purchase of Gifu, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴's attack on him had only fueled the fire. The reporter's expression turned even more serious as he shared the latest developments. Midoriya had declared that he would no longer collaborate with the heroes after the incident, while 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 had been suspended without pay from the Hero Association for 3 months, although she could still perform hero work. The Justice League had been approached regarding her membership but had yet to respond. The reporter expressed his opinion that the Justice League, with its 349 members, could afford to lose one. He emphasized the need for heroes to demonstrate their value to the public, reminding viewers that while the people of Japan would always be grateful for their efforts during the villain war, it was time for them to prove their worth once again. As the broadcast went to a break, Izuku stood at a workbench, focused on a computer and a chemistry set. He mixed several chemicals, creating a yellowish liquid that glowed faintly as he poured it into a canister. Dressed in his bat suit, only his mouth was visible through a black mask that acted as a filter. After placing the glowing canister in a safe case alongside others of various colors, Izuku paused for a moment before resuming his work. He sensed the presence of his companions and invited them to ask about his project. After a brief silence, he began mixing a new set of chemicals, producing a light blue glow from the beaker. His companions emerged from the shadows, approaching him as he finished organizing the last canister. They were curious about his work, with one of them teasingly asking if it was a secret reserved for only the Batmen. Izuku chose to ignore the bait and responded that he was working on possible antidotes for hypertrigger, aimed at countering the chemicals that could be used to create the full drag. His friends exchanged confused glances. One of them questioned the status of hypertrigger, noting that it was still in its early phases. Izuku finished cleaning the bench, and his helmet formed around his head, making him appear taller and more imposing. His companions found this transformation natural, though one of them expressed mild frustration. He confirmed that the Golden Empire had not yet perfected the drag but expressed confidence that it would not be long before it was ready. When asked about his confidence, he revealed that he had already created a version of it. This revelation surprised his friends, as they recalled being told that another month was needed to reach the next stage of development. As he prepared to leave, he invited them to join him in a mission to destroy Golden's manufacturing center that night. They exchanged glances, contemplating the offer. An explosion rocked a deserted area of Kyoto as a warehouse ignited in flames. Inside, Batman skillfully dodged an energy blast and countered with a swift hook, incapacitating the attacker. He then leaped toward another group of thugs. Batgirl charged at a thug who was struggling to reload an automatic weapon. By the time he was ready, she was already upon him, forcing the weapon to the ground. As the thug fired, Batgirl held it down until the magazine was empty, allowing her to deliver two powerful punches that rendered him unconscious. Batgirl continued to evade gunfire, leaping and flipping through the chaos. Spoiler intervened by tossing a smoke bomb into the fray, obscuring the view of 5 thugs firing at Batgirl. She jumped into the smoke, swiftly taking down 2 thugs with precise kicks. Regaining her footing, she struck another thug in the knee, following up with a solid punch that knocked him out. As the smoke cleared, she executed a kick to a thug's head just as she spotted the last one aiming a rifle at her. Before the thug could pull the trigger, Batman intervened, using a wire to disarm him. The thug's shots ricocheted off Batman's armor, charging it with energy. Batman then delivered a shock through the wire, incapacitating the thug. He retracted the wire without a glance at Spoiler, weaving under a giant stone hand and landing 2 powerful punches on a golem-like figure, causing it to revert to its human form. She was uncertain about her feelings toward the new successor. Seeing him stirred anger within her and resurfaced old insecurities from her time as Robin. A guy found on the streets had become Batman, and it felt like a slap in the face. She couldn't even begin to imagine what Damian and Tim were experiencing. Yet, she couldn't help but marvel at how quickly he had adapted to the cowl. Just 2 months ago, the footage they had reviewed showed him as a newcomer, driven by rage. Now, it was as if he was effortlessly maneuvering between each thug. Spoiler regained her focus as she rejoined the fray. Batgirl observed everything unfold, multitasking effectively as she took down another thug. She had been watching this new Batman closely and had sided with him during a recent family disagreement, not out of belief in him, but because she trusted Bruce's judgment. Bruce was not one to trust easily, especially not with the cowl. That was why she had supported him, or rather, Bruce. However, she wasn't going to follow someone blindly. She needed to witness his actions firsthand. So far, she was impressed by his growth since they had begun scouting him, but she needed to see more. Batgirl knocked another man down while lost in thought. Batman took down the last 2 thugs just as flames engulfed a large portion of the roof. He reflected on his unfortunate connection with burning buildings. Activating his detective vision, he scanned the area until he spotted an outline of a water tank on the roof. With determination, he used his boot thrusters to propel himself upward, changing his symbol to red as he struck the fiery roof. The impact sent a shockwave that caused the water tank to burst, dousing the flames with a rush of water. Batman landed back on the ground as the last of the thugs fell. The trio surveyed the room while Batman approached one of the tanks at the edge. He examined the contents on a holographic screen. It appeared to be Hypertrigger in a semi-perfected form, though it seemed unstable. Unbeknownst to them, one of the thugs was struggling to rise, pulling out a syringe and injecting it into his arm. A grunt of pain drew their attention, and they turned to see the thug slowly standing, his body beginning to spasm. Batman scanned the man and the surroundings, recognizing the syringe on the ground and confirming it contained Hypertrigger. He alerted the others to prepare for a fight as the man's body began to transform, bones cracking audibly as he grew taller, black fur sprouting across his form. His face contorted, forming a snout, and his eyes turned a chilling icy blue. More of his body morphed into a wolf-like shape as he dropped to all fours. The last cries of pain morphed into a howl as the creature stood upright, its human-like form now covered in thick fur and muscle. Spoiler expressed disbelief at the transformation, while Batgirl moved to flank the creature. Batman stood firm in the center, his AI analyzing the hyper-trigger to determine which compound had been used. They would find out soon enough. The wolf grinned menacingly, white vapor escaping its mouth, revealing a blue interior. In a sudden burst of speed, it charged at Spoiler, claws raised. She braced herself, but the attack never connected as Batman intervened, absorbing the blow. The claws tore through several inches of his armor, leaving deep scratches across his chest. Using the kinetic energy from the hit, Batman retaliated, sending the wolf crashing against a wall. His AI reported the status of his armor and energy reserves as he prepared for the next move. He instructed Spoiler and Batgirl to evacuate the thugs, anticipating that things would escalate. As he laid out his plan, his symbol turned white, repairing the damaged portion of his armor before reverting to red. Without waiting for their response, Batman sprinted toward the wolf, which howled in response, meeting him halfway. The wolf swung wildly, and Batman narrowly dodged, landing a blow to its chest that sent a wave of red energy rippling from the impact. The wolf snarled in anger, countering with a powerful swing. Batman's symbol shifted to orange as he absorbed the punch, feeling the suit crackle with energy. The two continued to clash, with Batman appearing to dominate the fight through the sound of his powerful strikes. However, he knew that despite his apparent advantage, he was not inflicting real damage, and each missed blow could be catastrophic. He had to hold his ground while Batgirl and Spoiler worked to finish their task. As they dragged the unconscious thugs from the warehouse, Batman continued to battle the wolf. They secured the thugs just as Batman was thrown into a pillar, debris cascading around him. Groaning, he forced himself to his feet, assessing the damage to his suit and body. His AI reported critical integrity levels and multiple fractures. Despite the grim situation, Batman found a glimmer of hope. He had the antidote for this variant of hyper-trigger, but administering it would be a challenge given the wolf's thick skin. Spoiler and Batgirl prepared as Batman retrieved the antidote from its case, the light blue liquid sloshing within the injector. The wolf howled again, seemingly growing larger, icy mist escaping its breath as it advanced toward them. The trio managed to dodge just in time, but the wolf continued to freeze a significant portion of the warehouse until it struck Spoiler, sending her flying and encasing her in frost. Batman changed his symbol to light orange as he approached the wolf, which continued to expand and release more ice. Even as it froze Batman and Batgirl, a surge of heat radiated from Batman, freeing him as he pressed forward. Activating his detective vision allowed him to see through the blizzard-like conditions, revealing something was terribly wrong. The wolf's heart rate was erratic, it was in fear and pain, unable to control itself any longer. Batman urged it to fight back, claiming he had the cure to stop the chaos. However, his pleas were drowned out by the wolf's howls as ice spikes erupted from its back, tearing through its flesh. Batman quickly returned to Batgirl and Spoiler, lifting them from the ice and pulling them close as he transformed his symbol to gold. At that moment, an explosion of ice erupted from the wolf, and a golden barrier enveloped the trio, shielding them from the destruction of the warehouse. As the winds calmed, snow began to fall, and the golden barrier dissipated. Batman shifted his symbol to light orange, warming Batgirl and Spoiler back to consciousness. Rising, he walked to the center of the explosion, where he found the wolf's body, contorted and covered in ice spikes. He offered a silent prayer as he collected a BLD sample and an ice sample before returning to his companions. Batgirl and Spoiler nodded at him before grappling away, leaving Batman alone in the snow. Looking at the unused antidote in his palm, Batman let out a heavy sigh, wishing he could have done better. Izuku sat on a park bench, watching children play in the snow with a small smile on his face. Dressed in a simple black hoodie and a beanie that covered his messy green hair, He wore casual gray sweats. If one looked closely, they would see the kanji for hoodie on his chest, a modest outfit for a billionaire. His companion, Bruce, was dressed more fittingly for his status, wearing a large fur coat and a bowler hat with stylish breathes. His oak-cut cane rested on his lap as he observed the children in the playground, the same park where they had met over 7 years ago. Izuku reminisced about their first encounter, asking Bruce if he recognized the place. Bruce recalled the moment he met a young boy trying to stop a robbery, prompting Izuku to smile as he fiddled with a piece of candy he had bought that day. Bruce chuckled at the memory but soon turned serious, questioning why Izuku wanted to meet there. After a moment of silence, Izuku expressed doubt about his worthiness. Bruce countered with his own question, asking if Izuku regretted taking up the mantle of Batman. Without hesitation, Izuku replied that he did not. Bruce reassured him, stating that every day he donned the cowl, he sought to right his wrongs and improve himself. He admired Izuku's determination to be better, insisting he could not ask for a better Batman. Izuku's frustration surfaced as he lamented the strain he had caused within Bruce's family, feeling they doubted his capabilities. Bruce looked him in the eye, emphasizing that it did not matter what others thought. What mattered was that he believed in Izuku. The weight of Bruce's words struck Izuku deeply, and he felt tears welling up. Bruce placed a comforting hand on Izuku's back, encouraging him to continue his crusade and prove his worth. As Bruce drew Izuku close, he urged him to show everyone why he deserved the cowl and why Bruce had chosen him. A large smile broke across Izuku's face as tears fell, and the knight and his ward sat together for a few more hours. Izuku walked down a hospital hallway with Mei by his side, accompanied by numerous white-coated staff and businesspeople, all displaying panicked expressions as they struggled to keep pace with him. Despite the chaos around him, Izuku maintained a confident demeanor, unfazed by the urgency of the situation. The staff's anxiety stemmed from the fact that Izuku had just purchased the hospital and was already implementing changes, such as introducing new policies and departments. This was the 8th hospital he had acquired that day, as he had decided to focus on the medical industry during the holiday season. One of the men in a business suit questioned Izuku's decisions, expressing concern over the addition of 5 new departments and policies aimed at addressing malpractice. Izuku dismissed the worries, believing that the inclusion of quirk research and therapy was entirely reasonable. He confronted the staff, making it clear that if they had issues with the new policies, they could resign. As he glared at them, some averted their eyes, while others met his gaze. Izuku's intensity left no room for doubt. He was determined to ensure that the doctors fulfilled their responsibilities. He warned them that if they chose to leave, he would simply buy the next hospital they went to, reinforcing his commitment to transforming the medical field. You all tried to take advantage of the attention the heroes were receiving during their rebuild, attempting to exploit the people of Japan. That ends now. So, either fall in line or leave my country. Izuku concluded his statement as he continued walking until he reached an office, where Mei joined him. The small crowd dispersed to attend to their duties or organize their documents. Izuku sighed in frustration, trying to calm himself down. This was the first time he felt his composure slipping since he had embraced the virtue of patience. They save lives for a living, yet when he asked them to save a few more, it felt as if he had asked them to sacrifice their own limbs. He grabbed the large oval table in the center of the room and effortlessly tossed it across the space. Mei observed him with an unimpressed expression, hitting 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐸𝐵 that caused the glass to fog up. Greed is one of the deadly sins, Izuku. Along with wrath. Izuku understood the implication as he exhaled deeply and took a seat. 4 lives a month. Was that too much to ask for? Not for a typical doctor on the rise. They likely save that many in a week. However, the main issue lies with the older doctors, those who believe they have already paid their dues and deserve to relax while maintaining their salaries. Izuku felt his frustration rising again but managed to maintain his composure. He had thought this would be one of the easier industries to reform. They save lives after all. Mei regarded him for a moment before speaking again. So do heroes, and you know how that turned out. Izuku couldn't argue with that, letting out a shaky sigh. He decided to get some fresh air. Was that wise? After all, It had only been a couple of weeks since he had nearly lost his life. Izuku didn't respond as he donned a coat over his suit and exited the room, prompting a sigh from Mei. Outside, Izuku brushed snow off a bench before sitting down, almost collapsing onto it. His breath was visible in the cold air, which he used as a focal point to regain his calm. He realized he was allowing society to get to him again. He couldn't afford to lose himself once more. As he contemplated, a loud crash interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see a boy throwing a trash can against the wall, pacing back and forth in distress. Izuku could sense the boy's turmoil. With a sigh, Izuku approached the breathing child. Frustration was evident on the boy's face. His black spiked hair was messy, and his eyes were red from lack of sleep and tears. He appeared tall for his age, but his youthful features suggested he was no older than 10. Dressed in a black coat and jeans, the boy seemed lost in his anger. Izuku cleared his throat to announce his presence. The boy ignored him, grabbing the trash can and hurling it against the wall once more. "Did the trash can steal your girl or something? It seems it has received enough punishment." The boy shot Izuku a glare, but Izuku felt no intimidation. He could see the boy was barely holding it together. "Leave me alone, old man." Izuku raised an eyebrow as the boy turned back to pick up the trash can again. "You know, I've learned from my experiences that discussing your problems instead of taking them out on a trash can is far more beneficial." The boy growled, gripping the trash can tightly, his knuckles turning white. "What's there to talk about? My aunt, the only family member I have left, is dying, and no one wants to help her. She's a hero who fought in the villain war, yet the hospital demands an outrageous amount of money." Izuku could feel the boy's anger but let him continue. "She helped save Japan, and yet the hospital refuses to treat her until we pay a sum that even a pro-hero would struggle to afford. It's just not fair." Izuku remained silent as the boy began to cry, his face still twisted in anger as he stared at the ground. Izuku saw a reflection of his younger self in the boy but felt a twinge of jealousy, realizing this child was clearly loved by his aunt. That's when Izuku made a decision. "What's your aunt's name?" The boy hesitated, but something about the man next to him made him feel he could trust him. "Shino Sosaki. The pro-hero Mandalay." Izuku smiled softly and patted Koda on the back. "Koda-kun, I won't pretend that life gets easier. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. What I will tell you is to keep moving forward. Never let anything keep you down. It's okay to fall, but it's never okay to stay down, because giving up allows the unfairness of this world to win. Never give up, Koda-kun. Your aunt needs your strength to overcome this. Now go to her, and I promise things will get better." Koda didn't know how to respond but nodded and got up to leave. He didn't notice the man taking out a phone. As Koda walked down the hall toward his aunt's room, he felt a bit better after their conversation, but doubt still lingered in his heart. He knew his life wasn't the best compared to most kids. His parents had been taken from him when he was young. He had nearly lost his life to a villain. The hero who saved him had refused to support his dreams afterward. And now, his aunt was fighting for her life. Yet, he knew for a fact that some kids had lives far worse than his. An image of Eri smiling at him crossed his mind, making him question how he could complain about his own life. The man was right. He needed to be stronger, not just for himself but for Auntie as well. When Koda arrived at his aunt's hospital room, he found her listening to a doctor. He felt a growl of frustration rising within him, fearing they were about to discuss payment again. Shino saw her nephew approach, a massive smile lighting up her face. She exclaimed that the doctor had just shared some good news. Koda looked confused as he moved to her side. The doctor explained that an anonymous donor had decided to cover all of her medical expenses until she was cancer-free. Koda felt a wave of relief wash over him as Shino hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. The doctor assured them that treatment would begin right away and left the room, allowing the two family members to celebrate together. Detective Tsukachi took a long drag of a cigarette while standing on the snowy roof of the Tokyo Police Department. The night sky was dark and dim, clouds blocking out the stars as snow gently fell. He had aged considerably since the end of the villain war, despite being only gray streaks filled his hair and wrinkles lined his face. Leaning against the wall that connected the building to the roof, he tossed the cigarette into the snow when he heard a thud behind him. He turned to see Batman, his golden symbol glowing in the snowy night. Batman admitted he had thought it might be a trap at first. The detective took out another cigarette as Batman began to survey the rooftop. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲 remarked that he hadn't expected the most respected police sergeant to want to talk to him, assuming he would be at the top of the detective's capture list. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲 replied that while Batman still was, they had something more important to discuss than arrest. He leaned against the railing, gazing down at the streets below. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲 expressed his concern that the country was sick and unaware of how deep the infection ran. People believed the corruption was limited to the hero society, focusing their efforts there while neglecting the rot that had spread to the police, hospitals, government, streets, and the very soul of Japan. The only person he saw trying to make a difference was a wealthy individual who had decided to help the country. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲 extended his hand to Batman, asking for help in cleaning up the rot. Batman looked at the offered hand for a moment before they shook firmly. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲 smiled and suggested they start with his home turf. Batman landed in a dark alley, checking the coordinates displayed on his wrist. The moonlight barely illuminated the space as he walked toward a back door. Sensing a presence behind him, he turned to see Red Robin standing not far away, expressing frustration at Batman's tardiness. Batman apologized, explaining he had needed to take care of some matters first. Red Robin led the way into the building, mentioning that Cass and Steph had vouched for Batman, believing he was a good candidate for the cowl. As they climbed the staircase, Red Robin informed Batman that he had found a contact who could help locate one of the main leaders of Golden and lead them to a primary distributor of Hyper Trigger. Batman activated his X-ray vision and quickly ascended the ramp, leaving Red Robin confused as he hurried after him. Batman burst through the first door at the top of the stairs, shattering it. He flicked his wrists, forming two batarangs that he hurled at a closing blue portal, striking someone just as it vanished. Red Robin arrived at the scene, shocked by the chaos in the apartment. Everything was either destroyed or thrown out of place, with a single body lying in the center of the room. Red Robin cursed under his breath, realizing their lead was gone and urging Batman to use his detective skills. Batman knelt to scan the area and collect a sample of the assailant's BLD, running it through the criminal database he had access to. As his AI worked, he examined the residue left from the portal. Red Robin began his own investigation, noting the signs of struggle on the body. The victim had multiple stab wounds and signs of a fight, indicating the assailant had not achieved a clean kill. Red Robin surveyed the apartment, tracing the path of the struggle that began in the kitchen and ended at the entryway. Something felt off. Their contact had been dead for at least an hour, yet the killer had not left. The only explanation that made sense was that they had been searching for something. Just then, Red Robin noticed Batman kneeling at a floorboard, tearing it cleanly from the ground and pulling out a flash drive hidden within. Red Robin was taken aback by how quickly the new hero had deduced the situation. The room had one area that, despite being damaged, had not been part of the fight. His enhanced vision revealed numerous fingerprints belonging to the victim in that spot. On the counter lay a pair of nails and a hammer, suggesting that something was being concealed, something the killer wanted. Batman tossed a drive to Red Robin as he moved toward the window, explaining that he had tracked the killer's teleportation residue, which could lead them to the truth. With that, Batman leaped out the window, grappling away, with Red Robin following closely behind. Red Robin felt a mix of emotions. He didn't aspire to be Batman. His frustration stemmed from Bruce choosing someone off the street who hadn't proven themselves, while others, including his own biological son, had to earn their place. It felt unjust to everyone involved. Determined to demonstrate the levels of skill required, Red Robin had summoned Batman to showcase his detective abilities and remind him of the reasons behind their selections. As they raced through the city, Red Robin struggled to keep pace with Batman, who effortlessly sent a map of the residue, further bruising Red Robin's pride. This only fueled his longing to prove himself. He landed on the ground, hopped onto his bike, and sped toward the location, leaving Batman behind. In his haste, he missed a scream echoing from a nearby alley, where Batman had just jumped in. Upon arriving at the motel, Red Robin traced the path of the residue, breaking through a window and quickly ensnaring the criminal with a rope, ensuring they couldn't activate their abilities. He demanded to know why the individual had killed Romaine. Later, Red Robin stood on a rooftop in Tokyo, waiting for Batman. 2 hours had passed since he last saw the vigilante. He had already solved the case, uncovering the assassin's suppliers and dismantling a small branch of 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐸𝐵𝐻's organization with the information from the drive. Yet, Batman had not shown up. Feeling a bit annoyed, Red Robin had hoped to impress him. As he waited, a commercial on a giant screen shifted to a news report featuring Batman. The report showcased Batman saving a runaway bus by leaping through its side and taking control, followed by footage of him thwarting a store robbery. Red Robin watched in awe as the news displayed video after video of Batman's recent exploits. He realized how focused he had been on his own case while Batman had been busy preventing numerous crimes. A wave of self-reproach washed over him. Just then, a figure landed behind him, prompting Red Robin to turn and see Batman. Batman apologized for his absence, explaining that he had been caught up with other matters and offered to help. Red Robin took a moment before smiling and sharing that he had a new lead on a different case, inviting Batman to join him. In another part of the city, Izuku stood in a shelter, observing the area where people were congregating. With the holidays approaching, he had recently acquired the shelter, revamping its amenities and providing additional funding. It had been operating at maximum capacity for far too long. Given his investments across various industries in Japan, he needed to start filling positions, which meant his employees were screening the sheltered individuals to identify their strengths and skills. Many had fallen on hard times due to the villain war. Izuku believed in offering support, but he also recognized that not everyone was genuinely seeking help. Some individuals were too entrenched in their struggles to improve. Therefore, he enforced a system where those receiving aid had to pass checks. Failure meant they would be asked to leave. He understood it was a harsh approach, but sometimes a firm hand was necessary. As he continued to observe, Duke Thomas approached, clad in a bright yellow jacket, leaning against the railing beside Izuku. Duke acknowledged that while Izuku's actions were kind, the public would focus on those who were turned away. Izuku, maintaining a flat demeanor, replied that it needed to be done, and he was determined to see it through. Duke noted the conviction in Izuku's voice, recognizing the depth of his commitment. Duke remarked on the aura Izuku exuded, hinting at his ability to manipulate various forms of light, including the light he could perceive. Izuku listened intently as Duke began to speak. Duke expressed his surprise at the idea of a Batman operating in Japan, feeling a mix of shock and irritation at what he perceived as a disrespect to the legacy. However, upon meeting Izuku on the rooftop with the others, he sensed a remarkable aura surrounding him, so bright that it almost blinded him. Duke remarked that Izuku radiated like a constantly glowing sun, which was ironic given the mantle he was taking on. He accepted Izuku as Batman, acknowledging that while Damien was his brother and would always be his Batman, he believed there could be more than one. Duke considered Izuku an excellent choice. Curious about Duke's unwavering belief in him, Izuku pressed for an explanation. Duke smiled, seemingly distracted by something behind Izuku. He noted that anyone who had a child willing to follow and protect them must be a good person. Izuku was momentarily taken aback when Aira appeared behind him, equally surprised. Duke revealed that he could sometimes see her as a golden outline, a pure soul. He explained that while he had previously only seen premonitions, he had since gained the ability to perceive real spirits, which made Izuku's brightness stand out even more. Duke mused about the idea of a mystic Batman, finding it intriguing. As November 19th arrived, Izuku was busy typing on the Batcomputer in his cave. He wasn't in his suit, which was unusual, but he had too much to do as Midoriya to step out as Batman. He was working on various case files, facing some challenges with 𝐒𝐮𝐸𝐵𝐻, and making progress on Babel, which was about 25% complete for Japan. Time was limited before he had to make another public appearance. While typing, Izuku paused and addressed an unseen presence, inviting them to ask about his work instead of lurking. He heard a thud and footsteps approaching. Batwoman emerged from the shadows, standing a few feet behind him. She glanced at the screen, frowning at the gray space displayed, while Izuku continued typing as if he could see everything clearly. When Batwoman inquired about the screen, Izuku explained that it was a ghost screen protector, linking his DNA to the screen so only he could see its contents. Batwoman scoffed, finding humor in the paranoia that seemed to echo Bruce's behavior. Izuku clarified that it was about security, emphasizing the potential consequences of the information on the computer. Batwoman, familiar with the concept of security among Batmen, pressed him about his own contingency plans, suggesting that every Batman had one. Izuku remained silent, his expression blank, but Batwoman noticed a slight tension in his jaw at the mention of the number one hero. She assured him that she wouldn't pry into his life, but warned that if he ever strayed from the path or caused harm, she would be there to stop him. Izuku didn't respond. As Batwoman prepared to leave, she cast one last glance at him, stating that she had no say in whether he should be Batman. To her, Bruce's choice was enough, and at least he had granted Izuku permission to wear the symbol, which not everyone received. With that, she departed, leaving Izuku alone in the cave, staring into the darkness before returning to his work. On November 20th, Izuku was unleashing his frustration on a punching bag, each hit powerful enough to nearly dislodge it from its chains. With a loud grunt, he delivered a right hook that sent the bag flying, landing with a heavy thud. Taking a moment to calm himself, he prepared to replace the bag. As he hooked a new bag onto the stand, he heard a thud behind him and turned to see Jason standing there, dressed in a muscle shirt with wraps around his hands and a scowl on his face. Without needing to say a word, the intent was clear. Izuku complied, tossing aside his gloves and wrapping his hands tightly. His gaze remained fixed on Jason as the fallen sun began to stretch, cracking his bones and loosening his muscles. Once ready, Izuku assumed a simple boxer stance, mirroring Jason's movements. Jason initiated the attack, charging at Izuku, who was prepared. However, Izuku was caught off guard when Jason threw a hidden rock, distracting him just long enough for Jason to land a solid hook to Izuku's jaw, followed by a strike to his abdomen. Izuku quickly recovered, blocking the next blow aimed at his head, but Jason grappled him, taking him down to the ground by wrapping his arms beneath Izuku's defenses and collapsing into a crude hold. Izuku managed to escape by dislocating his shoulder and forcefully throwing Jason to the ground, causing the hero to gasp. He quickly separated himself, hopping up and popping his shoulder back into place in one fluid motion before delivering a front kick to Jason, who was kneeling. The kick landed squarely on Jason's face. However, Jason countered by grabbing Izuku's knee and pulling him back down. Straddling Izuku, Jason began to throw punches, landing 2 solid hits to Izuku's face. As he went for a third, Izuku retaliated with a powerful strike to Jason's nose, resulting in a loud crack as Jason's head snapped back. Seizing the moment, Izuku leveraged himself and kicked Jason off. Jason attempted to pull Izuku back down, but Izuku quickly grabbed some dirt and tossed it into Jason's eyes, temporarily blinding him. This allowed Izuku to land a knee strike to Jason's face, causing him to drop to one knee. Izuku then stood tall, looking down at the hero. Jason chuckled as he rose, adjusting his broken nose and clearing a BLD clot. Izuku spat BLD from his mouth, and the two fell into a fighting stance once more before charging at each other again. A crack echoed through the dark cave as Izuku's feet skidded back on the concrete. He was breathing heavily, his body covered in bruises and scratches. His face bore the marks of their battle, with one side swollen and the other red from a burst vein. Jason was in a similar state, his face marred with bruises and both eyes showing signs of damage. He breathed just as heavily as Izuku, struggling to bring his arm back up to defend after throwing a punch. The two had been fighting non-stop for the past 3 days, with some family members watching the brawl for a while before leaving. The fight had been intense, with both using everything they had to try to win. It was clear that both were extraordinary in their own right, one raised from the dead and the other blessed by the dead. Izuku attempted to throw a punch, but it was weak and slow, allowing Jason to block it and deliver a heavy punch to the side of Izuku's face, causing his head to snap back. The difference in experience was evident. Despite Izuku's more refined fighting style, Jason's longer history in combat gave him the upper hand. Izuku was running out of steam, and even against all odds, his energy was waning. He tried to retaliate again, but his movements were sluggish, allowing Jason to land another jab to Izuku's face, making his head jerk back once more. Izuku struggled to maintain his balance, but his legs felt weak, and he collapsed onto his back. Jason took a deep breath as he stared at Izuku's still form, believing he had won. But then, to his astonishment, Izuku began to push himself up, causing Jason's mouth to drop open in shock and his tired eyes to widen slightly. It was truly baffling to him that this young man could still muster the strength to rise. Izuku managed to get to one knee and looked up, meeting Jason's gaze with determination. Jason recognized the fierce spirit within Izuku, a fire that refused to be extinguished. Jason could see that Izuku wanted to stand, but his body was reluctant to cooperate, trembling in place. Making a choice, Jason walked over to the kneeling Izuku and extended a hand. Izuku accepted the offered hand from Jason, the fallen son. Fingers tapped away at a computer, adorned with tiny yellow bats on feminine nails, as Barbara continued her research. She considered herself inquisitive, and something about the new successor piqued her interest. She felt a mix of emotions regarding him. She wasn't particularly angry about not being informed about the new member, but her discomfort was more directed at Bruce than at Izuku. Bruce knew how much the title meant to Damien. What intrigued her most about Izuku was his origin. Officially, he was an orphan whose parents had died in the Villain War and was subsequently taken in by Bruce. This led to the present situation. She found the story troubling, not because it didn't fit, but because it fit too perfectly, like a scripted movie. Thus, she began to dig into his past, seeking anything that might reveal inconsistencies. It wasn't out of malice, she simply needed to know. Initially, her search was challenging. She uncovered BRTH certificates, death certificates, school transcripts, and photographs, all proving that his story was real. Yet, something felt off, prompting her to dig deeper until she found a significant clue, a single death certificate for Eira Midoriya. The initial story mentioned that Izuku had a sister, but the certificate listed no parents or legal guardians, despite Izuku's timeline suggesting his parents should still be alive. Determined, she continued her investigation, tracing the timeline of when Izuku met Eira and uncovering hospital documents related to her. It didn't take long to find Eira's original BRTH certificate and details about her quirk, all buried under layers of firewalls and viruses. This led her to investigate the parents, and within 15 minutes, she discovered they never existed. She was impressed by how deep the deception ran, tracing lineage back to the Edo PRD, but it was all fabricated. Returning her focus to Izuku, she sensed something was amiss. His records were flawless, yet she knew in her heart they were false. It was evident that much of the information was concealed due to his training with Bruce. What troubled her most was the absence of any record prior to Eira's death. It was as if Izuku had appeared out of nowhere. His past was meticulously crafted, almost making her give up, until she found the one thing that connected everything. This information was buried deep under numerous firewalls and security locks, challenging even for someone as skilled as her. It was an old CCTV footage from around 11 years ago. She watched as Izuku walked to the candy aisle, and then the robbery began. She soon understood why it was under such heavy security. This was the day Bruce and Izuku met, and it didn't match the story at all. It didn't take long for her to uncover the rest of the story. She started by cross-referencing the uniform he wore with a database. It led her to the middle school and his original paperwork, revealing his name, Izuku Yagi. A name that shouldn't exist. She couldn't help but dig deeper. There wasn't much to find, except for 3 documents. 2 were BRTH certificates, one for Izuku Yagi and the other for Izumi Yagi. Everything began to click in her mind as a picture of Deku appeared on the screen, waving to a crowd. Yet, why were they so distant if they were twins? Her question was answered in the next document. A termination of parental rights. A wave of pity and anger washed over her. She could expose this, reveal the truth about his old family. She had the school transcripts detailing the bullying, text messages from Deku's friends, and more. She could ruin them with a single click, yet she hesitated. Why hadn't he exposed them himself? She guessed he was the one who buried it all. But why didn't he ruin them or even blackmail them? It was a question that lingered until it finally clicked for her. He was trying to move on from everything, including his past. Bruce had described Izuku as someone striving to improve himself. Did that mean letting go of his past as well? She couldn't imagine the temptation he faced daily to reveal the truth. However, one thought crossed her mind as she closed everything she found and tucked it away in the depths of the web. This wasn't her secret to reveal. On December 1st, Izuku walked slowly into his cave, sensing someone was already there. He turned to the console and found Damien glaring at the screen. A news article about Izuku was displayed, announcing another hospital being bought and named after a hero who had helped during the villain war. It was a small attempt to restore relations with the heroes during the holidays. Damien was dressed in his bat suit, a long trench coat style with a yellow belt around his waist. The upper part featured a black collar that wrapped around his shoulders, forming both the cowl and bat symbol in a unique way. The cowl indicated he was Batman at that moment. Izuku wore his suit as well, its metallic sheen contrasting sharply with Damien's more traditional outfit. They were opposites, two sides of the same coin. One represented technological potential, while the other symbolized the roots of the legacy. One was born of a demon, and the other was treated like one. Both chosen to wear the cowl, yet could there truly be two? One couldn't allow that, the other simply cared for his country. The Batman of Japan. The Golden Knight. The Forgotten Child. The Bat blessed by the dead. The Mystic Knight. Izuku Midoriya. Verse. The Batman of Gotham. The Demon Child. The Successor of the League of Shadows. The Robin that defied death. The Knight who sold his soul. Damian Thomas Wayne. It was time for the two to clarify what would happen from now on. Who truly deserved the cowl? Izuku's cheerful demeanor was interrupted when a batarang was thrown at his face, which he caught effortlessly. Damien's voice was gruff and angry as he stated that Izuku's fake attitude wouldn't work on him. He could see through it, and likely the others could too. They accepted Izuku out of pity. Izuku froze at the tone, his eyes narrowing as his smile faded. Damien continued, expressing that he wasn't questioning Izuku's care for the country, as that would insult the symbol on his chest. He was talking about family, about how their opinions shouldn't matter to him. Izuku remained silent, staring at Damien. Damien pointed out that they both sought one man's approval, just like each other. Anything else was irrelevant as long as they completed their mission. As Damien stretched methodically, cracking each finger, he never broke eye contact with Izuku, who began to cover his face with his helmet, preparing for the confrontation. Damien moved closer, their white and golden eyes locked in a tense stare. Damien smirked, suggesting it was time to remind Izuku who the BLD's son was. Izuku challenged him, ready to show what a wanted son looked like. The first punch was thrown by Izuku, but Damien anticipated it, ducking underneath and placing a device on Izuku's chest. It turned out to be a thruster that propelled Izuku backward. He quickly destroyed it and prepared for the showdown. Damien wasted no time tossing several batarangs that exploded upon contact with Izuku, sending a golden shimmer across his suit as it stored the energy. The distraction allowed Damien to slip into the shadows. Izuku scanned the area, his eyes shifting to X-ray vision, searching for the other bat. He acknowledged that he relied too much on technology. He knew that in a head-to-head fight, he stood no chance, but that was also Damien's disadvantage. His vision changed to purple, resembling echolocation, as he detected wave outlines behind a pillar. As expected, Damien peeked from behind it and tossed another batarang. Izuku attempted to block it with one hand, resulting in a sonic boom from the impact. The feedback affected him due to his enhanced audio, but the Beyond suit was built to withstand overloads. Today marked a significant failure for Izuku, whether due to a mechanical issue or sheer bad luck, remained a mystery. He collapsed to one knee, his balance disrupted, and the ringing in his ears was overwhelming. Damien approached the fallen successor, pausing momentarily before him. He uttered a single sentence that Izuku could not hear, hinting at the vulnerabilities of technology. Without a backward glance, Damien walked away, leaving Izuku to recover, A glare etched on his face as he stared at the ground. The BLD had triumphed today. Far in the countryside of Japan, nestled among mountains and forests, lay a small estate, the home of the former #1 hero and his wife. After the villain war, they had retreated to this peaceful life, embracing retirement, something neither had anticipated due to their perilous careers. Now, they intended to savor every moment. Inko tended to a small garden outside while Toshinori worked on a puzzle indoors. The joys of retirement allowed him to explore hobbies he had never had time for before. As Toshinori placed a piece of the Justice League puzzle, a somber thought crossed his mind. The piece depicted Izuku's face, a reminder of his lost child. He often replayed the night Izuku had run away, questioning what he could have done differently to prevent it. The memory always returned to one painful truth, that document which had shattered their family. It was a cowardly thought to blame the paper. It merely represented their failure to keep Izuku close. Perhaps if they had not pushed him away, he would still be alive. Toshinori recalled his battle in Kamino Ward, where All for One had taunted him, claiming responsibility for Izuku's fate. He vividly remembered the grotesque creature with green hair emerging from a portal, whispering, "Dad," in a pained voice. His fears were confirmed when he realized he might have to confront his own son. Yet, AFO had incinerated the creature with a powerful blast, leaving nothing but ashes behind. The battle had been chaotic, and despite his longing for vengeance, he had been stopped by Superman before he could strike AFO down. During the villain war, AFO had boasted about the horrors he inflicted on Izuku, revealing the quirks he had twisted to create that abomination. Toshinori had not been able to defeat AFO himself, but Bakugo had taken that honor, earning Toshinori's eternal gratitude. Taking a shaky breath, he placed the final piece of the puzzle, burying those memories for now. After securing the completed puzzle in a glass frame, he turned just as Inko entered the room. Inko sighed in annoyance, reporting that the foxes had raided the tomatoes. Toshinori chuckled, recalling their earlier conversation about the fence. Inko, slightly irritated, retreated to the bedroom for a shower, leaving Toshinori smiling fondly. Just then the phone rang, prompting him to answer. "Hello," he said, and after a brief silence, a soft, dejected voice responded. It was Izumi, and she sounded troubled. She asked if their mother was around. Toshinori called for Inko, sensing something was off. Izumi hesitated before revealing that she had found Izuku. The parents exchanged confused glances, and Izumi confirmed that he was still alive. The scene shifted to December 10th, where heavy snow blanketed downtown Osaka. Izuku observed the city from the third floor of a community center, dressed in a gray coat with black fur lining and gray dress briefs. Today marked the opening of a youth center for disadvantaged children, providing them with opportunities in quirk training, sports, STEM, and more. This day celebrated their 1,000th enrollee, and Izuku was pleased with the progress he saw as he interacted with the children. As he descended to the foyer, he noticed a crowd gathered around someone he couldn't see. The children's excitement suggested the presence of a celebrity or a renowned hero. Izuku forced a professional smile as he approached, but as he drew closer, the hero's voice became clearer, and his smile faltered. He froze when the crowd parted, revealing a figure he had hoped never to encounter again. Time had not been kind. The man appeared frail, with gray hair and sunken blue eyes, a shadow of the person he once knew. He wasn't foolish, he understood what had happened to the man and what he had sacrificed for the country. Yet, he couldn't help but clench his fists as a wave of hatred surged within him. The former hero was laughing with the children, who eagerly begged for tips and autographs, which he promised to provide. When he finally looked up, time seemed to freeze. His eyes met the son he had thought lost so long ago, now grown and staring right at him. Memories of the young boy with a bright smile flashed through his mind, only to be replaced by the frown of this man, whose eyes burned with a deep-seated resentment, hidden from the children but glaringly apparent to him. Toshinori felt compelled to call out to him, and he did, addressing Izuku in a way he knew would resonate with him. He greeted him warmly, expressing relief at finally seeing him. Izuku hoped his father hadn't recognized him, but the look in Toshinori's eyes confirmed his fears. He was slightly grateful that the encounter hadn't become more complicated than it already was. However, the hatred in his heart was beginning to overwhelm him, prompting Era to emerge and help him regain control. He dreaded to think of what he might have done by now without her support. Her familiar warmth soothed him, calming the storm of anger, but it still lingered beneath the surface. He needed to be stronger for her and for the children around him. He had to learn to let go. A smile broke across Izuku's face as the kids turned to him, and he shifted back to his professional demeanor. He apologized for the interruption, explaining that he needed to make a call before saying goodbye to the children. Tashinori felt a twinge of unease at how quickly Izuku had masked his emotions. But he decided to play along, widening his own smile. He expressed his regret for the timing of their meeting, mentioning how much he had heard about Izuku but struggled to reach him. Izuku laughed lightly as he embraced a child who had rushed to him, sharing that he sometimes found solace in solitude while trying to mend a broken country and broken homes. Tashinori noticed the flicker of anger return to Izuku's eyes at the mention of homes, prompting him to look away, using the children as a distraction. He suggested they take a picture before parting ways, and Izuku hesitated, weighing his options. He decided to see the situation as an opportunity. He called the children to gather between them for the photo. As they posed, a photographer appeared, ready to capture the moment. Tashinori hadn't anticipated this when he suggested a picture, but he felt unable to protest without causing a scene. The photo was taken, and Izuku walked over to the photographer, instructing him on the caption before he hurried off. Izuku bid farewell to the children and headed toward the basement parking. Just as he reached his car, a voice called out to him, causing him to grip the door handle tightly in frustration. Tashinori, breathless and slightly coughing, called out to him, but Izuku remained still, staring into the window of his car. The rage on his face was so intense that he barely recognized himself, prompting him to begin his breathing exercises to regain composure. He denied being Izuku, attempting to brush off the confrontation. Tashinori insisted, pleading with him not to dismiss their connection. Izuku's grip on the handle tightened, triggering the car alarm. Tashinori froze as Izuku's back rose and fell with heavy breaths, the alarm blaring in the background. Eventually, Izuku calmed himself, silencing the alarm with a click of his keys. He turned to face Tashinori, his voice steady yet cold, warning him not to call him that name. Izuku's eyes, filled with anger, seemed to pierce through Tashinori, evoking a familiar feeling of guilt that had haunted him for years. Tashinori wanted to shrink away from that gaze but stood firm, meeting Izuku's intense stare with his own weary eyes. He recalled his own words, the ones he had written down for the government to see, affirming that he was no longer his son. Tashinori flinched at the reminder, looking away as he admitted the wrongness of his actions. He explained that they had wanted to protect Izuku from their tumultuous lives and the dangers posed by All for One, whose impact on Japan was still evident. He had not wanted Izuku to be involved with that life or that monster. Izuku demanded to know the reason for his neglect before that fateful day. He pressed for answers about why he had been treated as if he didn't exist, why his sister had been favored, and why he had been mistreated at school. His anger surged as he challenged Tashinori to justify his failures as a parent and to explain how he planned to make amends. Tashinori struggled to respond, admitting that he could not provide excuses without lying. He confessed that he was not a good father and didn't deserve the title. All he could offer was a heartfelt apology, expressing a longing to rewrite history if it meant getting a second chance. Izuku regarded the broken man before him, and as his anger began to fade, it was replaced by a sense of disgust and pity. He chose not to respond further, turning away to enter his car. He slammed the door shut and drove off, leaving Tashinori standing alone, grappling with the weight of their unresolved past. Batman stood before a thug, who cowered on his knees. He inquired in his deep, metallic voice whether the information he held was true, inspecting a vial of green liquid and a small flash drive. The thug, a young man with pink hair and yellow eyes set against a black scara, appeared to be around 19 years old. Soi Ishido, the younger brother of Mina Ishido, found himself in a difficult situation after a disagreement with his sister. After several rough encounters with a dangerous crowd, 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲 realized that this life was not for him, but he still wanted to be useful. This led him to become a mole for Batman. He acknowledged the risks involved, understanding that he might not survive this dangerous game. He informed Batman that his cover had been compromised. While they didn't know he was working for Batman specifically, they were aware he was a mole. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲 felt resigned to his fate, believing that his family would be safe, his parents were gone, and his sister was a hero. Batman observed the young man's anxious expression and offered his support, but 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐴 insisted that he didn't want false promises. He understood the risks and simply asked Batman to take down the one responsible for the chaos. Batman agreed, securing the vial containing the perfected hyper-trigger and the drive with vital information about their enemy's operations. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 managed a sad smile, expressing his hope that justice would be served. He walked away, leaving Batman to carry out his mission. 3 days later, 𝐒𝐮𝐴 was found dead in his apartment, but his sacrifice would not be in vain. On December 16th, Izuku Midoriya sat at an elegant table, surrounded by the opulence of a gala funded by the city of Tokyo. The event was meant to showcase a new government branch dedicated to combating corruption, a concept Izuku found ironic given the leader's reputation for corruption himself. He planned to address this issue after dealing with Golden. As he observed the gathering of influential figures, Izuku recognized their intentions to secure funding for their project, likely to misappropriate it. While sipping his water, he noticed a commotion at the entrance as paparazzi swarmed a newcomer. With a sigh, he turned his attention to the unfolding scene, aware that this person could play a significant role in Japan's future. The man emerged from the crowd with an irritated expression before locking eyes with Izuku and approaching him with an air of arrogance. He introduced himself as Damian Wayne, speaking fluent Japanese. Izuku responded with a bow, acknowledging their cultural context while switching to English to make Damian comfortable. Damian explained that he was also there to support the Tokyo police force, framing it as a noble cause. Izuku chuckled, recognizing Damian's intent to embarrass him publicly. He agreed that it was a noble goal but firmly stated that he would not provide any funding. The atmosphere shifted as the crowd fell silent, surprised by the confrontation. Izuku elaborated on the need for an anti-corruption program, criticizing the logic of having those responsible for corruption oversee the initiative. He pointed out the flaws in the plan, particularly with Chief Kaga's controversial history. His refusal to support the program left the audience stunned. Damian, misreading the situation, attempted to undermine Izuku's standing in society, but Izuku simply smiled and encouraged him to proceed with his plans. As he walked away, he noticed whispers circulating among the guests, revealing that they were discussing the program rather than him. One by one, attendees began to leave, and soon more than half had exited. Damian realized the extent of Izuku's influence in Japan. A single refusal had caused a government initiative to lose momentum. It was a significant defeat for him, but he would never admit it. In that moment, the balance of power shifted from the BLD to the future.